This disturbing missing person story gets darker every time you look closer. The two Dutch women who got lost in the jungle in Panama went for a day hike, didn't turn back, and apparently got lost deep in the forest during the rainy season. Creepiest thing is that their phones were discovered in a backpack downriver, fully intact, along with a camera that had photos. Normal, happy photos of them on the trail, taken just an hour before their internal phone records showed that they started trying to call 911, or the local equivalent, for help, and 90 other photos taken in the rainy darkness in the middle of the night between 1 and 4 a.m. a week after they disappeared, methodically showing a cliff and some bushes and some impromptu markers made of what little things they'd brought with them. Fragments of their bodies, we're talking bones and a boot with a footstool in it, were found a couple of months later. But nobody really knows for sure how they died. Accident on the trail? Fell into the rapids? Murdered and then someone was playing with their phones? I don't know. This story creeped me out big time. A guy in my mum's town has been missing since November. He's younger and has epilepsy, and his family have been very shifty in their statements about it. It's just creepy to me because this is someone I know who's either dead or hidden. There's just no way the kid's been out in the wilderness living this entire time. This isn't hatchet. To clarify, I don't support witch hunting the guy's mum. Everyone in my city has been doing it since November, and in the scenario that she's innocent, she's probably going to be haunted by this. Her own son is gone and she's the prime suspect. And considering she's obviously the prime suspect, don't you think the police would have found something out had she done it? I know everyone would just like to believe they're Sherlock Holmes, but please don't start vigilante investigations. They generally don't help. Just put all of your efforts into finding him and not attacking his mother, people in that town. Someone my mother knew went missing a few years ago. While they were looking for her, news crews interviewed a friend of hers who was distraught. During the interview, he said he hoped she could be found, and they informed him that they'd just found a piece of her body. At this, he went pale and had to walk away and sit down on the sidewalk. Sometime later, it was discovered that he was the one who did it. He pled guilty after a long legal battle and is serving a life sentence. My mother knew the victim and her family well and was deeply affected by this. I was in my early teens and wasn't sure how to process it. I didn't know her personally, but it shocked me that something like that could happen to someone even tangentially related to my life. I guess we'll have a mix of unresolved cases and ones that were missing for a long time before their eventual resolution. Both sorts are equally fascinating and horrifying, in my opinion. Oof, this woman who was working alone and got dragged out of a gas station, all seen on camera. The footage was so bad they couldn't even figure out who it was, so they put out a message in the paper with his coat description. Someone eventually says their janitor always wears that coat. They go to the guy's house and search non-stop over and over again. They find a single burned tooth in the backyard. It would have been inconclusive, but the girl had gone to a dental conference and got a just-on-the-market filling that only like 2 people in the world had. So they caught him. Just to add to the story, a bystander caught a partial license plate as the guy drove past a park, but his car was registered under the wrong color, so they couldn't find the car. Yes, this was a Forensic Files episode, and the technology back in those days wasn't what it is today. The Brandon Lawson case. There are several recordings and voicemails from him in what sounds like a very long and drawn-out chase. Around 2 a.m., he was in a field in Texas and called 911. In the call, it's hard to hear what he says, but he sounds distressed and panicked. He cuts off, and that was the last he was heard from. His brother said he called after him, but he has yet to be found. It sounds like he ran into something, and he mentions he's being chased in the woods. An outside party edited the audio to take out some of the noise interference, and it sounds like shots in the background of the call. Allegedly, at 1 minute 03 of the audio, you can barely hear a faint "help me." I was informed by some Redditors that he had a felony warrant out for his arrest, so he was more scared of whatever he had encountered than he was of going to jail, because he specifically requested the cops regardless. I'm actually from the area where Lawson lived. People don't talk about the case much anymore, but I think a lot of outsiders fail to realize that the area around Bronte or Concho Valley is generally a no man's land. Spotty cell phone service, long winding roads leading to nowhere or to the next small town, huge acreage with nothing on it except thickets of mesquite trees and cacti. He could have been bit by a rattlesnake or shot by an angry rancher, or he was picked up off the road and abducted. I find it odd he still hasn't been found. On December 25, 2024, Brandon's wife, Ladessa, posted on the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page that the DNA results had finally returned a positive result for Brandon Lawson, confirming his death. The exact cause of his death remains unclear to us. My sister, but hold on, the ending is positive. She went missing during high school. She started hanging out with the wrong crowd, got into substances, and then just disappeared one day. 2 days went by, not a word. Then one day, my mum spotted the truck of the guy she was seeing when she went missing. It was parked at a hotel. We have a few police in our family, so they went to check it out. Sure enough, it was her with this one scummy guy. The guy was wanted and went to jail. Sister went to rehab. She's now a college grad, clean for over 10 to 15 years, has 2 beautiful kids and a genuinely great husband. She's a living success story. This is a ray of light after reading all of these dark, scary stories. The Missing Germans. It's a long read, but it is fascinating. Basically, some German tourists decided to go on an adventure in Death Valley in a rented minivan with no real idea of how stupid that is. Last seen on 23rd of July 1996. Despite an intense search and rescue operation, no trace of the family was discovered, and the search was called off. In 2009, the remains of the 2 adult members of the family were discovered by experienced hikers, Les Walker and Tom Mahood, who were carefully searching a remote area for evidence of the fate of the tourists, and conclusive proof of the fate of the male adult was later established. The disappearance of Susan Powell. This one's heart-wrenching. I was so absorbed in it when it was still going on, but it's been a while since I looked into it. Apparently Susan went missing, and her husband said he took his kids late-night camping, leaving in the middle of the night and returning the next day. In the middle of winter, and his wife was gone when he returned. So much just points to him murdering her. Her phone and belongings were still at home. Her family didn't hear from her. She had made it clear that if something happened to her, her husband was responsible. He had been bullying and possessive. Oh, and a large wet spot on the carpet with a fan blowing on it when the police arrived. Oh, and the kids saying they knew they'd never see their mum again and that she wasn't around when they were awoken in the middle of the night and put into the front seat of the van to go camping. By some fluke of the justice system, the husband was never charged and took the rest of the family on to a very, very sad ending that we can't actually put into the video. As far as I remember, no closure on Susan being found, no body, no justice, and no answers. It baffles me. A local one for me, but the case of Dakota James. In short, he was a Pittsburgh college student who went missing. People say he fell in his car, city residents disagree, a bunch of guys went missing around that time, and they all had the same gay dating app on their phone. 2 of them, Brandon Swanson, on the phone with his dad when he exclaims, "Oh crap," and he's never heard from or seen again. And 2, Sarah and Jacob Hoggle. Their mother took them somewhere safe and has never told anyone where that was or what happened. She also apparently has paranoid schizophrenia and is not competent to stand trial. My daughter stopped in the same spot every day while walking home from school. Then my wife or I would pick her up. I argued and eventually convinced them that this was not okay. She needed to either stay at school or walk home. About a couple of days later, a car was stopped across the street. 2 guys, older teens, were hanging out with the doors open, listening to music. When my daughter was across the street, one of the guys started sprinting towards her. She ran. The guy stopped chasing after about a block. She told me about this, and I thought it was nothing, just teenagers screwing with a little kid. Then she told me that when the one guy started chasing her, the other turned the music up real loud, blasting it. That made my blood run cold. It was no longer a couple of guys screwing around, it was someone who noticed her pattern and had a plan. Sorry for the obligatory, this story isn't exactly what was asked for, but it does just haunt me. To add, our neighborhood is a little removed. No outside traffic comes through, and it isn't likely that the people who tried to abduct her were from around here, which raises an unanswerable question or two. Oof. Well, I for one am glad you added it, if for nothing else than giving us a near miss to be relieved about, rather than another tragic story of how potentially awful we can be to other members of our species, or another family with unresolved heartbreak and trauma. My brother-in-law's uncle was driving to work, and they found his truck with all of his belongings, except his clothes, still running on the side of the road. No sign of him, just gone. Pretty famous, but Henry McCabe. The most bizarre thing about his disappearance is the voicemail that was left, though. It had all sorts of noises where people speculate it could have been the sound of waterboarding or getting tased. His family also apparently misled the police a few times, and his friends, who were the last seen with him, made a series of poor decisions which led to the disappearance. It was also odd that the FBI got involved with all this. As I said earlier, the creepiest thing I find is the voicemail of strange sounds that he left that nobody could identify. Apparently there were a few recordings of it posted on the internet, yet nobody can find the full audio anymore and only bits and pieces. Not creepy in a supernatural sense or anything, but definitely baffling. But Somebody Knows Something podcast has 2 seasons that discussed 2 missing person cases in Ontario. The first season is about someone who basically disappeared while fishing with his father and siblings in the 70s. The second season is about a 29-year-old woman who went missing in January of 1998. Both are still unsolved, and the guy doing the podcast explores a bunch of the different theories and interviews people with connections to the case. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The disappearance of UMass Amherst student Maura Murray. There are so many weird, disturbing details to her disappearance, but none give any true leads to her whereabouts. Perhaps the creepiest element of the case is the suspicious actions of her father, although these are due some speculation from one blogger in particular, so the credibility is questionable. Also, Maura was last seen after getting into a car accident in New Hampshire, but when the last witness came back after calling for help, she had left the crash scene without any tracks in the snow. I've been digging into Missing 411, and there are some very unsettling and seemingly unexplainable missing persons cases in America's national parks. There's a very famous Japanese case where a mother said she was going to meet an old classmate, left the house, leaving an 18-month-old baby behind, and just never came back. What's really creepy about it was when the husband was being interviewed on TV, there was a memo on the wall that said, "Don't believe anything Yoko says." Yoko was the name of the missing lady's sister. I read this a long time ago, so the specifics are hazy, but from what I read, it was legit. It took place in the 18th or 19th century, but a group was traveling through the forest. One guy was around 30 yards ahead, joking around, and started running even more ahead of the group. As the stragglers turned the bend, they saw him trip over a log, and he was gone. All witnesses said they saw him trip and fall, but it was as if he fell into a portal. There was no hole, the path was clear and well-traveled minus the fallen tree or log, and the ground was sturdy. The stragglers were no more than 10 meters away, and it was a clear day. The guy was never seen again. Not sure about the veracity of it, but it always stuck with me. For what it's worth, the guy didn't have any debts, the people he was with were friends, and no foul play was suspected. He just tripped and fell into an abyss and was never seen again. The Schultz family from Drage in Lower Saxony. Husband Marco, who was 41 at the time, and his wife Sylvia, 43, and their daughter Miriam went missing from their home in Drage on the 22nd of July 2015, nowhere to be found. Marco's body was found a week later in the Elbe River, and he had a concrete block attached to his legs with a rope. Sylvia and Miriam, though, remain unfound to this day. Their house was just emptied of all their personal belongings and everything. It will be sold, the money will be put in a secure account until they find out who will inherit it. Sylvia can't be pronounced dead yet, earliest in 8 years from now, 10 years after her disappearance. Miriam, on the other hand, can't be pronounced dead until she would be 25. That's the law here in Germany. Many people believe that either they're all gone, maybe the dad did it before jumping in the river, others believe that mother and daughter are alive. Who knows though, we may never know. Here is what I have learned from these stories. Do not go to jungle. Do not hang out in fields at 2 a.m. Do not go outside at night. Do not go outside at day. Do not drive. Do not stay in house. And do not be outside of house. What about that poor lady who claimed that a dingo took her baby while she was camping 32 years ago? The coroner has finally ruled that a dingo did in fact take the baby. Also, in Portland, Oregon, Kyron Horman was dropped off at his school by his stepmother, never to be seen again. Big story in the Portland area, and lots of searches and accusations towards the stepmother, but no charges yet. I've never understood why anyone would find it even remotely possible that an apex predator would take an infant. Of course it did. Not necessarily creepy, but the disappearance of Sky Metalwala in Bellevue, Washington. The mother clearly did it, her version of events just doesn't add up, but she's never been arrested. The crazy thing is, a rerun of Law & Order aired on a local TV the night before the disappearance, and the circumstances of the case on the episode are eerily similar to the real-life case. A local girl my age went missing after hanging out with her friends, and a friend is suspected. They never found any body, but they did find her DNA inside the trunk of his car. It's the creepiest case I know for the very narcissistic reason that she and I are of similar demographics, and she knew her attacker. She knew him well enough to feel safe walking alone with him at night, and that's scary. There's a book from 1983 called Stranger Than Science by Frank Edwards. I read it a long time ago, but one story still creeps me out. I might not remember the whole story correctly, but it was about a man who disappeared while walking across his front lawn. Some family members could hear him calling faintly for help weeks after he disappeared. He was never found. Pedro Lopez is a serial killer who, at least according to himself, has killed more than 100 people. He spent some time in prison and at some point was freed, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Well, reading these answers at night before bed was a terrible mistake. Yeah, reading about a prolific unaliver still at large with a habit of ending and mutilating regular folks like me is a spin on things that makes it a little more personal, isn't it? Sleep tight, listeners. There's a couple of students that went missing in a town not far from where I live. They were taking a walk across this railroad bridge. They were taking Snapchat videos as they were walking. As they neared the middle of the bridge, they turned and noticed a man following them onto said bridge. They got him on video. You could tell the guy had malicious intent. They went missing shortly after they took the video. Sad stuff, they still haven't been found. Update. Okay, it's been brought to my attention that their bodies were found shortly after they went missing. Evidently, the perpetrator is still on the loose. This was in Delphi, Indiana. The disappearance of Asha Degree. This case wouldn't qualify for a Twilight episode or anything, but it was crazy in that she had a good family, she was a good student, everything should have been fine and without risk, and this girl still vanished. February 14th, 2000. It's not only Valentine's Day, but her parents' wedding anniversary, and Asha is missing. Adults in her life sheltered her, maybe to a fault. There was no computer or internet in the home. No cell phone. Asha's friends were from the church or school. Nobody she interacted with was an unknown. A stranger would have had no access to her. She was either at church with family, school, at a relative's home, or her own home with her parents and brother. I say this to illustrate that even in the early days of chat rooms and messaging, Asha wouldn't have been using these things to meet someone online. Anyone unfamiliar in her life should have been quickly spotted. But what we know is that the night of February 13th through 14th, Asha crept out of bed, dressed, brought a packed backpack with her as she went into the night. But for what? Apparently she was really afraid of storms and dogs, yet that night was pouring, cold rain, and she was alone with nobody to cling to as she usually would when walking past yards with dogs. She was a good kid who didn't break rules. At 2:30 a.m., her father was awake and checking on his kids. They were both in bed, safe. 3:15 a.m., drivers on Highway 18 think they see a girl walking in the rain over a mile from the Degree home. When one driver circles around to check if they need help, the kid runs off the road into the woods. If this was Asha, it's the last time she's been seen. Has she managed to walk over a mile in such a short time in driving rain at night, all by herself? Or was there a car waiting for her outside her house, and did she willingly climb in? Was she let out, or did she escape? Candy wrappers, markers, and a hair tie are discovered in a shed back in the woods that the drivers saw the kid run into. They belonged to Asha. A year later, during construction, her backpack is discovered in the ground wrapped in several plastic bags. There have been no more clues as to what happened to her. A popular theory is that somehow she was lured out. Someone told her maybe it's a surprise party for her parents' anniversary. We know that she packed family photos and a change of clothes, one outfit being somewhat dressy. Again, Ash is a good kid who doesn't tell lies. She had to be convinced this was a good secret to keep, I guess. One that her parents would be happy she kept and that she wouldn't be scolded for sneaking out and breaking the rules for. A person would have to know her family and not stick out as strange when talking to her. But why was she walking along the road? Did she escape the person only to be recaptured? Another theory centers around the book that she read in school, The Whipping Boy. In the book, the characters run away and have an adventure. But remember, Asha is scared of the dark, storms, and dogs. Why would she have a fun adventure on such a night? Why would she break so many rules along the way? It's just out of character for her. This case, it just shouldn't have happened. The facts are simply bizarre, and what we know just doesn't seem to fit. The police ruled out her parents, but could they know more? With no access to the internet, who could have manipulated a shy, obedient kid to fight against all of her deep fears and just vanish? Christopher Kurz. In 1989, Christopher vanished. The day he disappeared, his family received a mailed letter from Duluth, Maine, telling his parents that he couldn't explain why he was doing what he was doing. His van was later found hours away with a note detailing whose it was. He was never found. Based on the story, I think he self-deleted or he just walked away. He had been struggling a bit prior to the events and only took out $200 before disappearing. His van was left at a rest stop outside a heavily wooded area, but multiple searchers found nothing. They believe he may have hitchhiked to another area. It's possible he was murdered. or got caught up in the homeless lifestyle and is still alive but a vagabond living on the streets. Weird story though, with how easy he vanished. 3 lighthouse keepers went missing from a tiny island off Scotland. Nobody knows what happened, but when people came to the island, they saw that 2 of the 3 raincoats were missing. A meal was half-eaten and a chair was knocked over on the ground. When they checked the diary of one of the lighthouse keepers, it talked about a violent storm and how the other 2 lighthouse keepers were acting weird. What's creepy though is that there was never a storm in that region, even though the diary said there was. All 3 lighthouse keepers were never found. Okay, I believe someone did some experimenting and theorizing and figured out that 2 of them indeed must have gone out to secure something during a storm. It's not actually confirmed that there wasn't one at the time, and some of the sites posting about the incident often twist words. If there was a massive storm, there would have been massive waves, which explains 2 of the coats gone, and then the 3rd guy ran out to warn them of the waves without his coat, and they all got knocked over and sucked into the water. What tip made you 1,000,000 times better at flirting? If you're in a group of friends, new or old, find a natural opportunity to hang back. Someone who's interested in you will take notice and take the opportunity to talk with you in private. Now, this isn't foolproof, but it'll at least give you the opportunity to feel for any chemistry between you. Be wary of one-sided conversations. If your responses are being met with mostly yeps and and nothing without meat, it's probably not going well. People love to talk about themselves. You should ask open-ended questions that let them ramble. If you actively listen, Google it, there's videos that help, and occasionally relate back to earlier conversations. Is this the same girl you were telling me about with the big earrings, for example? Or that's the place where Jim fell off his chair, right? You'll be a really good listener and people will love talking at you. Sometimes too much. This advice is literally from the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you would like follow-up reading. I remember going on 9 dates with a girl who just got out of a long relationship and just wanted to be friends. To which I said, okay, cool, let's hang out then. One night she was dropping me off at my place after a movie. She turned the car off, put her arm on my headrest as we chatted before I got out. I was fully in the mindset that we were just friends, so I shook her hand good night. R.I.P. me. Yep, good at flirting means also recognizing when the other party isn't receptive. If they're answering briskly and killing conversation, cut your losses and move on. Look, everyone's giving good advice here, but flirting didn't click for me until I heard it described not as a set of behaviors to look out for, but as an escalation of suggestive behaviors couched in plausible deniability. Put practically, if someone's doing something to engage you that feels extra, like lots of touching, looking at you in a way that feels a bit too long, or doing a lot of poking fun and complimenting you, then that might be flirting or it might not be. That's the whole point. Plausible deniability. They can safely disengage at any time. If you want to know if someone's flirting, you need to test it. You do that by escalating things, but just a bit, so that now you have plausible deniability. Touch them back in a comfortable way, maintain eye contact, or joke compliment them back. If they escalate back and continue to do so as you escalate in turn, that is flirting. Eventually, one of you will break cover and do something with clear intent. A kiss, approaching, asking for a number, or straight up telling you what you think of them and that you're interested. Otherwise, if you escalate and they don't change their behavior or they back off, then they were probably just being friendly and you should definitely take the hint and do the same. Don't know if that's something obvious to people, but it definitely wasn't for me, and college parties would have been way less fun had I not started doing that. Hopefully, this can help someone else as well. Haha. Well, while this is an excellent analysis and description of the flirting process, the narrator isn't super sure that knowing about it is going to help us know if someone's interested. I think a lot of us know it on an underlying level, and will continue to be just as good at judging or misjudging and self-doubting as we were before reading this. I guess that your description of gradual probes might be something that would be a good thing for people to keep in mind if maybe they're a little more timid or have a harder time reading people. It's not like you have to go for a kiss immediately. Baby steps, like this guy talked about. If they look directly at you while talking to their friend, it's a good sign, especially when they're talking to cops and pointing at you. That's when you know she's into you. Flirting around the cops gets awkward though. You should probably just follow her home at that point. By the way, don't actually do this. I read once that if someone looks at you after someone said something funny, the joker doesn't have to be you, and everyone is laughing, they like you. From personal experience, it's true. This is like 90% true. It could also be just someone you admire. I heard this many years ago and sort of mentally logged the idea. I found myself looking at good leaders as well, in the professional world, But yeah, mostly the girl I found cutest as well, outside my professional life. They make a lot of eye contact. They're interested in what you have to say and ask you lots of questions. They laugh at your jokes, even the lame ones. They initiate physical contact. They try to find space where you can talk more privately. This doesn't always mean doing the deed, but it often means they wish for more quality time with you. Don't take these as signs that a worker is interested in you. They literally get paid to seem interested in the concerns of every customer and client. Furthermore, any of these one signs alone is not confirmation that someone likes you. Everyone flirts differently, and some might not even use any of the above tactics. These were simply some traits that came to mind based off my limited experience. I have never been an expert at reading signals, I was always shy, but I think the most important aspect of flirting is demonstrating that you take a keen interest in the other person and want as much one-on-one time to get to know them better as a person. Some people will rush the bedroom aspect of dating, at which point their flirtations become more physical and obvious. But for most dating adults, signals are more subtle and revealed through conversation. Does someone spend a lot of time around you? I'm terrible at flirting, but that's my method. Hang out. Be with this person. See if you vibe. My Netflix and I are really vibing, I can tell you. Generally, there's no one thing that gives it away. Everyone says to look for eye contact, look for posture, mimicry, stuff like that, and sure, there's some truth to that, but nobody should be expected to keep track of all those things, and not everyone exhibits any particular one. In my experience, almost everyone can get a sense that someone's into them, but most people second-guess themselves until they convince themselves it's nothing. I say trust that sense. It's based off all these factors that we pick up consciously and subconsciously, and almost always it's not a coincidence. When you think someone likes you, you can test that theory in a few ways. A subtle but effective example is inviting them to something you know they can't or don't want to attend. If they express interest in rescheduling or finding some other time to spend time with you, they like you. Otherwise, they'll just say no, sorry, I can't make it. This works because you're showing interest in spending additional time with them. This event would be more enjoyable for me if you were there, that kind of sentiment. And if they like you, they'll be sure to make it clear they're saying no to the event, not to you. Of course, you could also just ask. In my experience, anyone worth getting intimate with is mature enough to deal with that question. Here are a few examples of things that have helped me give away someone's feelings for me. When they tell their friends about me, remembering my schedule or other similar information, telling me about their previous interests with striking similarities, bragging about themselves in ways that would make a potential partner happy, like, I give great back massages or I cook a mean omelette, asking what my plans are at the end of a party or gathering instead of their friends, looking for or grasping onto shared interests. Folks, don't take flirting advice from this YouTube channel. Hey, where else am I supposed to get advice for the fake arguments with my shampoo bottles in the shower? Just little body language clues. If she puts her feet behind her ears, she probably likes you. Does their body turn toward you or away from you when you talk? Do they mirror your body language? Those are good signs. Physical contact. Granted, not everyone flirts the same way, but it's a good sign if they touch your arm or the like, or you find them smiling the whole time that you're talking to them. So everyone at the jiu-jitsu class likes me. Glad to know they're not just trying to nearly kill me. Once I, a male, had a classmate, a girl, who sat beside me during class. She actually told me to save that seat for her for the rest of semester. She'd play footsies with me and hit me in my legs with her shoes and knees. She also asked me what my favorite drink was and bought me that specific drink during our finals. Semester has passed and I didn't push on. Ugh, I'm an idiot. When I patted my classmate on her back and shoulder telling her she'd pass the history test and not to worry, she gave a slight gasp and looked straight into my eyes. When they find opportunities to come talk to you more often when they don't really have to, and linger for longer than they have to as well. All the advice in this entire group, and I'm sitting here like, I'm so damn oblivious, I wouldn't even notice these things looking for them. I really don't pick up on social cues at all, though. Everybody's saying eye contact. Like, do you all's friends frickin' stare at the floor when they talk to you? God damn. The narrator, despite trying his best his entire lifetime, actually really struggles with eye contact. I've had another recent conversation with a partner about it, and I kinda just think it's the sort of thing some people have to get behavioral therapy to fix. Oh well, I've done okay despite it. Seriously, tell a bad joke. Look for laughter and smiles that shouldn't be there but are. Then it's you they're into, definitely not what you said. One time I got the courage to look at someone in the eyes and said, I need one of those hugs that turns into a fun romp in the bedroom. He laughed and said, me too, and then continued talking about what we were previously talking about. I thought about running face first into a wall. From those I've consulted, 40% think he's clueless for not picking up the hint, 40% think I'm clueless for not following up his reply with a hug, 20% think he's not into me. All of those are fair guesses. I was once hugging a guy and we did the whole slight pull away to look at each other thing, and then I kissed him. He did not kiss back and I was super embarrassed and we just talked for a bit and then I made my exit as quickly as I could. He called me later that night and was like, "Wait, did you kiss me because you like me? I didn't kiss back because I wasn't sure if you liked me." Some people just, I don't even know. When a person is making relatively sensual physical contact, please, and I mean please, get flustered, or at least mentally flustered. Don't ignore them because you've known them for a while, don't pass it off as a joke, look for some signals. You'll regret not doing so. I've never been oblivious, but gosh darn have I missed hints before. Instructions unclear. So if a girl touches my arm, I should start doing my taxes? According to Sherlock, licking lips, eyes cast down towards the other person's lips, quirky smile of the lips, dilated eyes, and if the person has long hair, tucking it behind their ear or other fidgety behavior. Please note I'm not Sherlock and I suck at flirting. When people go out of their way to do something for you or say they really like spending time with you. If you're at a bar and a woman makes eye contact for more than a second without looking away, shoot your shot. I actually feel sorry for women if more than a 1 second of eye contact will give people an in to bother you. As a guy, I enjoy looking at people, regardless of flirtatious intentions. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Take it from me. We were in a club she wanted to go to. She was checking the girls out and asked which one I liked. I told her the girl with the hair to one side. Now get this. My idiot self noticed that she put her hair to one side, but I thought nothing of it. I'm sure she sent out more hints and cues, but being a guy with poor self-worth, I brushed it all off. There's no way she's into me. I was so wrong. It took one of her guy friends telling me that she hasn't shut up about me all night to realize that, hang on, she does? Long story short, if you think there's a chance, don't be an idiot and wait for luck to punch you in the face like it did me. Take the chance. Even if you're convincing yourself she isn't into you, she probably is. I'm not good at flirting, but somehow I got a boyfriend. But here are the things my boyfriend told me he saw in me. Close contact, mimicking movements, eye contact, laughing at jokes, and even physical contact. These are only a handful of the things to look out for, but I hope it helps. This is good, and I'd like to add one thing. Compliments. They should be few and genuine. Try to get one in early in the conversation. They can also be used as an icebreaker. Avoid compliments about their body or physical attributes. Compliment their clothing, hairstyle, and personality. People will give a lot of clues subconsciously. Also, some actions are flirting for some, but just being friendly for others too. Pay attention to their eye contact with you compared to others. If one has a small amount of eye contact with others but a lot with you, generally it means they're at least comfortable with you. Physical contact is usually big for people who aren't already touchy. People will generally be more touchy with those they like. When in a group and everyone's laughing, people generally look at the one they're most comfortable with first, or the one they like. Could be either or both. Action imitation is big. If you think someone's into you, do an action like hands in your pockets or something. If they copy, they probably like you, or are paying serious attention to you for some reason. If they laugh at your dumb joke, either they like you or the joke made them uncomfortable. Depends on the situation. Playing with hair is one thing that can mean something too, but people also just do that a lot anyway. Really, I'd say some things can be a good tell more often than not, but sometimes those actions can just be them being friendly. Unless it's blatantly obvious, it can be something else. That's why the communication or the risk of asking someone is important. It really depends on who you're talking to. My advice is to be observant. Some would prefer banters. Usually, when coming up with something witty, they return back what you said but relating it in a playful or opposing manner. I hope you get what I mean. Or playfully challenging your views. When it comes to touch, subtle touch on the arm or shoulders or patting the head and smile. Trying ways to hang out with you are also a sign, but some are a little more low-key, like me. That'll probably prefer showing a playful side when it's just alone. So, it is also a sign if they change their aura from normal or serious to playful when it's just you alone. I hope these have helped. Mirroring body language. This is a tactic employed by people who work in sales, and it's not always conscious. This is a psychological disarmament tactic we, as humans, deploy on each other. In the case of someone who likes you, while interacting, watch for repetitious patterns and mimic their body language. Eventually, if you cross your arms and the person whose attention you are seeking does the same, for example, you can rely on that being a good sign. That's not to say you need to reposition or fidget while interacting. Remember, being comfortable and at ease is a way bigger turn-on and ultimately lends itself to a more approachable experience for all parties. After all, acting natural is the penultimate Jedi mind trick. Everybody's social cues are different. Some may be more extreme than others, so don't take stuff from this thread as the actual truth. Some people are just really friendly. Yeah, as much as all the points being made in this video might represent interesting avenues to investigate or give you an urge to try new approaches, which is a good thing, I do have to stress this last commenter's point. There's no guaranteed way of any one approach working with everyone when it comes to flirting, and all of these should be read as suggestions rather than hard facts. When someone is usually composed in conversation, getting nervous and mixes up words when talking to you. For example, I met a girl and her friends, who became my friends too, the night before her birthday. I didn't speak much to her, but when we were departing, I wished her a happy birthday for tomorrow and she replied, "You too," and then got all flustered as she left the train. I watched her on the platform get teased by the friends. I tend to lean in a lot, or if you are the flirter, talk a little quieter so they lean into you. Kind of inconvenient with the COVID social distancing, but maybe not in the future. I've noticed that women will do little adjustments to you, like brushing off a little piece of lint off your lapel or moving a stray hair off your face while talking to you. At least they did back in my rogue days. I read this too fast and thought you said lick your lapel. Huh. It's all in the eye contact, baby. The attention. If you feel like suddenly you're gelling with someone really well and you're spending a lot of time together, if they pay you compliments freely and go out of their way to be kind or helpful, then they're probably putting in the effort so that they can F you. Reading these comments, I can say with full confidence that I've never been flirted with. I think I'm going to cry, guys. Maybe one day. If you're interested in a man and you aren't sure if he likes you or not, strike up a conversation while standing and try to notice if his feet are pointing towards you or not by the time you go to part ways. I learned about this in my general psych class, and I can't remember the specifics behind why, or if this works for women. I don't think it does, and I can't remember why. This is a thing, but apparently if he's interested in you, a man will naturally point his body in your direction. Body movement, or the way you speak. It tells a lot about the person on whether they're nervous or confident, and they usually change the way they speak when they're flirting, like their voices. Obviously, it depends a lot on the person. From my experiences in places like bars or clubs, it's kinda obvious if they're flirting with you, but in more daily places, you have to look for hints like excess of compliments, or if they look at you too much. I've scrolled through a lot of advice online and someone wrote something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, when girls like a guy, they have a tendency for their voice to raise pitch when they talk to that person. Some poor idiot replied something like, well, that explains why every girl I talk to sounds like Christian Bale playing Batman. Needless to say, the drink I was drinking was now plastered all over the wall in front of me. The key to flirting is to literally not flirt. Be relaxed and be yourself. With the right person, it'll just come naturally. What I've seen the most: 1. Trying to get close to you or orbit around you. They'll try and stand or sit near you, perhaps even hover a bit. 2. Using any reasonable opportunity to touch you, such as throwing an arm around your shoulder or touching the small of your back. Hugging a little too tightly or for not too long. 3. Taking a notable interest in conversing with you and not really anyone else in the room or area. 4. Complimenting you over things that are sort of arbitrary, like telling you you're brave for doing something not even scary or difficult. They're taking any chance they can to make you feel good. This is obvious now, but asking you to hang out in public outside of where you normally meet, like schoolwork. If they're asking you to get a coffee or try a food place with them, it could be a sign they're trying to spend alone time with you and push more into your life. And 6. Hanging around to leave at the same time as you do. They might just pretend to look at their phone or take a really long time packing their bag, but happen to start leaving when you do, consistently, so that they can converse with you on the way out. All of these could be signs of friendship for some people, so it's definitely not foolproof. However, these are things I myself used to flirt or have been used on me. Okay, so if a girl you're friendly with compliments your jeans and belt combo when at a bar, is that a sign? When you're bad at flirting, it's not that you don't see the signals, it's that you don't interpret the signals correctly or convince yourself that it cannot possibly mean that when you see the signal for what it is. At its roots, it's a confidence issue, so it's not fixable by other people being more obvious or knowing what to look for. You gotta fix yourself, folks. Guys, if she touches you lightly at random times, if she glances at your lips in one-on-one situations, if she ever pretends like she wants to fight you or actually does, playfully of course, especially if it's a pillow fight, and if she laughs at what you say a lot, especially giggles, these are all signs. Also, here's a good anti-tip. If you build up a persona of being oblivious to flirting, then you never need to let anyone down again because you can just play dumb. It has saved me a lot of friendships over the years, and I'm the only one who knows that I'm not actually oblivious. It's quite funny to know that out of all the apparently oblivious cases we've heard about tonight, mostly guys, there may be those out there that are just actively playing dumb to save themselves and those hitting on them some embarrassment. Good on you for finding a tactful way, I guess. Breaking the touch barrier. A pat on the arm, stuff like that. Step 1. Be attractive. Step 2. Don't be unattractive. Mirroring. Take a look at your text and see if they try to use the same emojis or same words as you do. They could even mirror some of your mannerisms if you meet up. Well, at least that's what I tell myself. Eye contact. Who breaks contact first, or are they constantly looking around or behind you? Physical touching. Try touching the arm or leg and look for their response, like did they back away or shift or did they move closer to you? Smiling. Are they smiling at you or frowning? And then the obvious, them making physical contact, mentioning future plans together, talking about banging or kissing at all, and winking at you. Girls will lock eyes and play with their hair or touch their forearm. Laughter, touching you. You should never interpret these signs as a done deal, but it means you might be doing something right. The only surefire way is this: if they behave differently towards you in a positive way than they do towards their friends. If she makes way more eye contact with you than she does with her other male friends, then she's flirting with you. If he makes way less eye contact with you than with his other female acquaintances, then he's flirting with you. This requires careful observation over time, so it's not appropriate for every situation, but it's really good for getting an eventual answer if you suspect a friend likes you. What's the most outrageous, elite snob you've had to deal with? I volunteered at a local library for 4 years. Most of the time, it was an amazing job, and I'm thinking of going to library school after college. But I do remember one lady who came to the front desk contesting a $1.20 fine, 6 books that she hadn't turned in yet. The situation escalated until she was yelling so loudly that a kid in the picture book section started crying, and she just kept saying, "My husband is a respected plastic surgeon," and "You can't treat me like this," and "It's the principle of the thing." She had a several $100 purse, designer sunglasses, and all that jazz. She clearly could afford to pay us, but she wouldn't. The situation didn't get resolved that day, and they still hadn't turned in the books. My manager, who'd taken a lot of flack from this lady like a pro, checked up on their account over the next few months. The fines kept building. After the initial grace period, it's 20 cents per book per day, and we called them multiple times asking for the books back, and eventually we ended up sending someone after the plastic surgeon's wife because she owed the library over $600. Sure, maybe we could have just discontinued her account and banned her from the library, but it was the principle of the thing. As a fire and EMT, we were called out to a house in a gated community for a person with chest pain and throwing up and a history of heart issues. We get in there in our boots and heavy gear, and the lady who met us at the door wouldn't let us in until we took off our, quote, dirty clothes. They weren't dirty because they'd just gotten back from the station wash, but they were still stained from the God knows how many fires we'd fought that year. So, Grandpa is presenting with type 1 heart block in the back with fading vitals, and we're sitting up front taking off our damn boots to not get the carpet dirty. The general manager at my job, I think he pulls like $2 million a year, refuses to use a pen if anyone beneath him has touched it. Ugh. I work as a bellhop, a valet, concierge, whatever. People throw keys at me, expect me to read their minds about what they need and what they want me to do. And it's people from the low range of higher income that are the worst, what I call les parvenus, something translatable to arrivists. I can attest to the difference between people who are kind of rich and those who are really rich. I used to work for a woman who was an honest-to-God billionaire, and she and her similarly rich friends were some of the nicest people I've ever known. When you have that kind of money, you kind of just stop thinking about it entirely. In fact, she'd always get rather annoyed when the subject of money ever came up. She hated talking about it. At least once a year, my mum will attack me for having too many blue-collar friends. Over the last year, I've bounced from blue-collar work to white-collar work and back again. I have more fun and make more money per hour in blue mode. And that is why some people go no contact with their parents. Better luck with the next group of people who raise you. Well, here goes. I'm an enlisted soldier working on staff with a bunch of senior officers. My wife and I had been on an adoption waiting list for about a year and then some. Well, one of the senior officers is always going on about her genius child. I get it, everyone thinks their child's a genius. Well, after a few months, her and her husband, another senior officer, get pregnant again. However, since she's a bit further along in her childbearing years, she goes and has some testing done. She comes into work and lets out a sigh of relief and says, "Well, the tests came back normal, but my husband and I had thought that if something was wrong," and then she looks at me, "we'd have let you and your wife adopt it because there's no way we'd be able to raise a genius and a handicapped child." I held my breath and almost bit a hole through my tongue. I've been in the army for almost 20 years, never actually had my feelings hurt, but that was rough. I live in Minneapolis. There's a suburb here called Bloomington and a small, elite, practically gated part of it called prestigious West Bloomington. I had a customer yell at me on the phone for reading her address back as West Bloomington, Minnesota. "No, sir, it's prestigious West Bloomington." I was in Kohl's buying a shirt. Man and I guess his wife were looking at suits. The wife says, "These are all cheap. I just spent $3,000 on a bag. You're not buying a $300 suit. This is where poor people shop." That is not a nice thing to say out loud. I don't know if this was the worst case, but I thought it was kinda stupid. I was wearing a shirt that I liked. I got it at a clearance price at Kmart. I was at my friend's apartment. When he saw my shirt, he got all annoyed and showed me the identical shirt in his closet. He had bought it at an exclusive boutique in Greenwich Village. He didn't want his shirt anymore, so he gave it to me. This is why a lot of designers insist that any of their unsold merchandise is destroyed rather than sold to discount chains or donated. They feel it dilutes the brand value, and no one will buy it at full price if they know they'll find it at Kmart or somewhere else later at a discount. I had just graduated college with my bachelor's in biomedical engineering. I was in the first year of my PhD program and worked a part-time catering gig that I'd been doing on and off for a long time. A woman whose son I went to high school with, who'd subsequently gone off to Harvard, was at the event. Now, this woman had always been fairly nice, though I'd had little interaction with her in the past. She and her husband were both doctors, Harvard grads, the whole packet. I said hi to her as I was serving her table and asked how her son was doing. Her reply was, "He graduated from Harvard, he's finishing up his second year of Teach for America, but he's struggling to figure out what he wants to do with his life." She then looks me up and down in my tuxedo shirt and vest, a uniform that I admittedly hated to wear, and she said, "I guess you can relate to that, huh?" I was pretty taken aback, but I just smiled and said that I was actually working on my PhD and this was a weekend job. The look on her face was priceless, but I judged the crap out of her that day. I'm glad she lost her congressional race that year. I worked at a country club once. Neighborhood members who lived in the fanciest neighborhood nearby were allowed to take their booze to go in plastic cups. In my state, open containers of alcoholic beverages are a criminal driving offense. They were also allowed to drunk drive home. One member was even allowed to do so despite being legally blind. The club was located next to the police station, so it's not like there was no police presence. The police usually just focused on pulling over the club employees, especially if they weren't wasps. So, if you drove a Mercedes out of the member lot on a Friday night, you were golden, even if you were off your butt. If you drove a Chevy Celebrity out of the employee lot, don't go a mile over the speed limit or you'd see cherries. There's this guy here who opened up a clothing store. His store got pretty successful, so he decided to open up another one. He chose the rich part of town this time, and it didn't start off too well. Nobody came in to buy anything. He eventually realized it wasn't due to his inventory or location, but his pricing. He raised his prices, and now that store is well off and making him loads of money. Good guys win, and elitists are paying for it. Not me personally, but my uncle started an architecture degree back in the day. This was back before the internet, so he turned up early on orientation day to enroll his second year. Turns out every single class was already booked up by students who were related to someone who could get them in early. Ugh. I worked on a construction site in Cambridge, Massachusetts some years ago. A woman parked in a parking spot that was clearly marked as a tow zone because of the construction. I told her she'd get towed and she started going off about, "This is a free country, I'll park wherever I want," blah blah blah. So anyways, the state trooper on duty as our police detail gets involved and tells her she'd get towed. The woman flips her crap and starts saying, "My taxes pay your salary. You're lucky people like me employ you. You work for me." Blah blah blah. In the end, she refused to move her car and we had it towed while she was in the store. Fricking witch. I knew a cop who carried nickels to give people who used that line. Haha. Look, regardless of your social status, if you ignore an employee and a cop telling you about your incoming ticket, Regardless of your social status, you deserve everything coming to you. Most cops I've heard of wouldn't even give the warning. Cambridge, Massachusetts seems to be a hotspot for weird snobs, as the next commenter explains. I have lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts for 2 years, and that former story does not surprise me at all. One time while I was bartending for a newly opened tavern, a customer came in and sat at the bar and checks out our food menu. We had these great soft-shell tacos on the menu. The customer wants to know if he can get them with corn instead of flour tortillas because of his gluten allergy. I told him that I don't believe so and point out that the food menu clearly labels gluten-free options, of which there are several, but I politely offer to check for him. I leave the bar, go to the basement to check with the chef. The answer was no, which I already knew, came back and apologized to the man that we were unable to offer corn tortillas at this time. He slams the menu down on the bar and starts screaming about how we're discriminating against him, this is unacceptable in this day and age, blah blah blah, and storms out without paying for his drink, which I then had to pay for because of my D-bag owner. Separate instance, but while working at the same place, had a black gentleman come in midday, have a couple of drinks. We had a very pleasant 15-minute conversation. After asking for his bill, he went on a 5-minute tirade about how I was racist for ignoring him, talking about how important he was, that he could buy this bar if he wanted to, and shouting so that everyone could hear, and then he left without tipping. No idea what that one was about. I was picking out some cereal. I'm not exactly swimming in money, so I buy the cheap knockoff cereal that comes in bags. That crap's delicious. This kid somewhere between the age of 5 and 7 picks out some of the bagged cereal, walks over to his mum to put it in the cart. His mum grabs the name brand box version off the shelf and tells him to put that one back, it's for poor people. I've got a friend who I've known for about 8 years now. We grew up together through our teen years and we still hang out. But this one time he asked me to hang out because he was feeling down. Being the good friend I am, I oblige. We meet up and it's silent for a few seconds and then he goes, I've been feeling self-conscious lately. Being the self-important guy he is, it caught me off guard, as I've never heard him say anything like that. So I ask why, and he pauses and goes, I'm feeling self-conscious because there's nothing left for me to work on. Like everyone else has faults and they have ways to better themselves, and I can't seem to find anything. I stared at him in complete amazement that he could even be so narcissistic. So I said, well, maybe you need to work on bringing your ego down to size. Okay, so maybe not so much elitism as it was narcissism. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was just applying my Rimmel lipstick casually when a girl walks up to me and goes, "And what brand is that?" And I tell her. She then snorts and says she wouldn't dare apply such trash to her mouth, and flashes me a couple of Chanel lipsticks. As a guy, I've got to say I wouldn't go near a woman with cheap Rimmel lipstick on. I'm just kidding. Like most guys, I have no freaking clue what the heck you're even talking about. I was once invited on a trip by a college friend. One of the guys there was what you might have called an alpha nerd. Up until then, I'd never really given the whole nerd thing much thought. I casually played video games, read a bit of sci-fi, but that was pretty much my entire contact with this subculture. The 3-day experience made me loathe nerd culture with a passion. This guy disliked me from the moment we shook hands. I have no idea why, maybe my face was particularly punchable that summer. Anyway, this guy went out of his way to prove he was better than me because of his interests, which he talked about non-stop. Our entire interaction consisted of him trying to initiate a nerd peeing contest with a guy who'd never had any interest in such things. After I said that I liked insert mainstream video game here, he gave me an hour-long lecture about how Planescape Torment was the video game equivalent of Jesus Christ. I had no idea I was such a rube because I liked mainstream games, really. In the 5-hour train ride, I had to sit through the exposition about 3 pulpy fantasy novels about some dark elves. He spoke with the condescending tone of a college professor dissecting Dostoevsky. It's kind of hard for me to emphasize how constant these lectures were or how incredibly annoying he was. I've never to this day met a person who was so virulently aggressive and arrogant in such a passive way. I still don't understand what he didn't like about me. Some of my cousins went to this uppity prep school with the kids of one of the wealthiest families in the world. This is what my aunt said about their mother. She doesn't look like all the other moms around here. She looks like crap. In reality, the woman was simply a well-dressed hippie. This same aunt also complained about how one of the Jewish parents took her remarks about him being a penny pincher the wrong way, so she bought him a Blu-ray player to make up for it. One more story, the same aunt also paid my other cousins 50 cents an hour and half a mustard sandwich to pick out all the rocks from the beach of her lakefront home so she could have a sandy shoreline. What the hell? My girlfriend has a friend who has rich parents. Well, not that rich, but well-financed. She has these weird rules, like she can't drink coffee at the cheap little coffee place. She must have it at the coffee shop where it costs twice as much. She can't wear silver jewelry because gold is better, and she can't buy clothes from sale. Another of her friends is also from a rich family. My girlfriend and I are both from poor families, got our money by ourselves, never got any help from our parents. We're quite frugal because otherwise we wouldn't afford to eat anything. Well, my girlfriend and her friend were just talking, and my girlfriend said something about trying to save money. This girl just snapped at my girlfriend and told her to loosen up. It's been quite easy for her. She gets everything paid for by her parents, including trips to the nice holiday resorts in southern Europe. Ew, that's the second rich person story where the individual in question hasn't shopped at a place because it's under a certain price. I don't know that I'll ever understand it. And sadly, it seems like her parents might be working their influence. Let's hope she's not beyond saving eventually. Working at a liquor store years back. This guy comes in, I won't even try to describe him because he was dressed like such a clown. Wants a pack of smokes. He looks like he could be under 18. I ask for his ID. His response, "Yeah, I've got my ID," holds up his phone. It's a picture of him with a happy number of $100 bills. I say nothing. "Money," says he. I say nothing. "Money is my ID." I still say nothing. He continues stressing how money is his ID and continues insinuating he has lots of it. I finally break my silence. I need to see a valid state ID. Hubbub and complaints ensue. Assertions such as, "I never show my ID," and claims that I suffer from some sort of jealousy. I reiterate my position. I love selling things. Big fan of capitalism I am. I just need to see your ID. He finally leaves after some more impotent hubbub. Parting shot, "You're just mad I drive a nicer car than you." It was a nice car, I admit. Rich kids of Instagram. Check out the account and prepare to hate the human race. When people in my neighborhood park in a no parking zone at the end of the block by the stop signs instead of driving halfway up the block and parking there, it's the ultimate, everyone else has to do it right, but the rules don't apply to me action, and it drives me insane. Not first-hand account, but on good authority. A friend of mine knew a guy in the oil industry who used to have the bank exchange his bills for crisp new ones. His explanation was, "I wouldn't drive a 2-year car, why would I use 2-year-old money?" During Hurricane Sandy, I saw the craziest thing. There was an intersection covered in downed wires and had just been blocked off by the cops. As they were leaving, a woman drives through the first set of tape. She's old and they get that. They turn around, lights and sirens going to try to get her to pull over. She goes through the second set of tape. They get on the loudspeaker and tell her to pull over. They don't want to ruin the tape any further, so one of them gets out and chases the woman's car down on foot. He calmly asks her, "Ma'am, did you see my lights and sirens?" She answers, "Damn right I saw your lights and sirens. Why would I pull over for you? I pay my gosh darn tax dollars to you and I just want to enter my house." He calmly stated to her that she just ran over 21,000 volts of potentially live wire and had just endangered both of them. He then had to explain backfeed as people's generators put power back into wire and make them live again. She did not give a single crap and kept yelling until she was issued a ticket for failing to yield for an emergency vehicle, reckless endangerment, and going through barricades. She was not happy. He then went back to help his partner fix the barricade tape that the woman had broken down. Because there were so many intersections that had been messed up because of the storm, they'd run out of tape to use and they just had to MacGyver spare strips of tape together to get it all back up. In short, a woman thought she was too rich to be zapped by 21,000 volts. I was once at our family friend's annual Christmas Eve party, and this family always comes who honestly no one likes. I guess the dads are friends, the host and the crap family, so they get invited. Anyway, they're pretty well off. The dad is kind of erratic and his kids are real pieces of work. The daughter once told us a story of how she was attending one of her private school parties at some kid's mansion, and an outsider arrives with a couple of girls. One of them's a fellow student of hers. He showed up in some kind of modded Nissan or Integra, and with his gregarious nature, he was quickly able to win over the hearts and minds of the wealthy kids he'd infiltrated. Well, she was miffed. Miffed, I say. Her comment to us was, "Who is this guy showing up in a Nissan? Ugh, totally not one of us." Or something to that effect. Made her sound real crappy, but then again, she always sounded real crappy. My first 2 years of high school was at an international college prep seminary. You were there because you were rich or you were smart, very rarely both. I was in the smart crowd. As a freshman, I made some initial friends through the orientations who happened to be loaded. We got along for the most part, but the difference in our background came slamming into view during the Christmas season. When I got back to school, we were all sharing our holiday experiences. My friends talked about how they got cars and weren't old enough to even have a permit yet, jet skis, and spent the holiday on a family-owned island or some other far-off exotic destination, or how their father brought them 25 grand in stocks. I remember talking about how I just enjoyed my time off at home, got some CDs and video games, and a sweet new pair of boots. I got ripped on for being the poor kid and they never let me forget it. I remember them saying how the school just lets anyone in here these days. I thought I'd point out, in case there were any outraged elites watching, that this kind of buffoonery happens across all classes. People with any advantage over a lower strata of society will inevitably start feeling entitled because of that power. I went to a low-decile school with a lot of students on the lower income brackets, and you can bet we always found someone lower than us to make fun of because we were little crapbag kids. Ugh, be better than us. Although, let's be honest, the richer ones are worse because they have so many people to look down on. I was out with the family and my mother. We'd recently celebrated her birthday. We had a fancy schmancy chocolatier in town, so we decided to treat my mum to a delicious chocolate treat. My dad-in-law asks if they have anything with caramel. The proprietor responds, "Caramel is oil and high fructose corn syrup. I do neither. Try the Walgreens down the street." He cocks his thumb over his shoulder. My father-in-law asks, "Well, could you explain what you do have?" The proprietor then said, "I already have no respect for you, but I will explain." When I paid the bill, I told him he was rude and he should stay in the kitchen and leave the counter to those who have a personality and know how to treat people with respect. He told me my money was not welcome in his store and asked me to leave. We all gladly left. Before then, I'd told nearly everyone who'd asked what's good downtown about this chocolatier. No more. Now I tell everyone what a butthead he was. In short, fancy schmancy chocolatier is a butt. Now I badmouth him. I actually witnessed this yesterday eating at Shake Shack with some friends. If you know Shake Shack, then you understand how busy it gets. Well, there was this woman with her 7-year-old waiting for a seat. She wasn't there very long, maybe 5 minutes or so. So this boy walks right past her and she grabs his arm, saying that she was waiting for the table that he was walking towards. He begins explaining that he was with his friends and was going to sit with them. She starts yelling at him, "How could you take a 7-year-old's seat? You're embarrassing yourself. I'm going to get the manager. I'll make sure you never get a job here," as well as other rude remarks. Then she looks at everyone else sitting in the area and shouts that someone should get up for her and her kid, and then shamed us for not getting up. Meanwhile, the place was filled with kids and their parents who patiently waited for a seat like the rest of us. Then the poor boy that got yelled at left because he was confused and embarrassed to heck. She then started talking to his friends, sitting them down, asking them rudely what school they went to, as if she was going to tell on them or something. She finally got a seat and stopped whining, but as we were leaving, my two friends who were the last to get up from our table noticed she actually did get to the manager to complain about the boy. What a witch. What's a 5-star meal on a budget? Okay, as the Russian, I'm telling you, potato is best food there is. It's cheap, you can cook it multiple different ways so you won't get tired of it. Also, won't get bad easily, or get rotten. My ancestors survived cold winters and wars just by eating potato. You can slice it into thin slices and fry or just boil it with hot water or oven it. Barbecue it, literally everything. Potato is best. I make hobo dinner when I go camping. Ground beef, onions, carrots, potatoes, and a bit of garlic. Wrap it all in tinfoil, I prefer the non-stick kind, throw it on some coals on your campfire. My friends who've never camped with me are always impressed. Spog, or salt, pepper, onion, garlic, is a basic seasoning base in the cooking world that's used in crazy amounts of food. That crap is amazing without adding any other flavors, but you should add some smoked paprika to the mix anyway. Baked potato with cheese and broccoli on top. Buy a pound of baking potatoes, a block of cheese, and a frozen bag of broccoli. It'll make you at least 3 to 6 of those. If you're feeling really crazy, you can throw in some chili as well. Canned chili for hot dogs works best. It can be as cheap as like 50 cents. I came here to say baked potato. I grew up so broke that we had potatoes at least once a day. There are so many ways to make them. Potato cakes were a staple. Just mashed potatoes mixed with flour and an egg to bind it. Fry that up in some oil. Horrible for you, I'm sure, but it's delicious. Sometimes Little Caesars throws pizzas in the dumpster outside after close. When I was homeless, I dated the night manager at McDonald's. I got a sack of dumpster-bound burgers big enough to feed me for the next 24 hours, and all it cost me was doing the deed with someone I was already boinking with anyway. Buttered toast with cinnamon and sugar. We used to keep a pre-mixed container of cinnamon and sugar because we ate this so frequently as kids, and my mum got sick of helping us fix our gosh-awful proportions. Buttered noodles. Spaghetti with oil and garlic. Quick, easy, and cheap. White bread garlic toast. Fried eggs and toast. The narrator is ashamed to admit that he's grown luxurious in his old age and primarily eats fancy sourdough and exclusively poaches free-range organic eggs. But no judgment if you're on a tighter budget and can only do white bread. I was a single mom in university. To stretch my budget, I made homemade soups. Every day for years, I had homemade soup for lunch and sometimes dinner as well. Do you have any tips for making your own soup? First, homemade stock. Bones, water, apple cider vinegar, and salt. I just learned this one a year ago, and the apple cider vinegar is the key. Google stock with ACV and you can get the right proportions. Second, dried beans are cheaper and better than canned. Check out the video Carla Make Beans on YouTube. 3. I do a lot of the tedious work ahead of time. I'll peel and freeze garlic cloves. I find they're easier to slice thin when they're frozen. I'll also cook and freeze other veggies I plan on using so I can stock up when things are on sale. And 4. For recipes, my favorite site is allrecipes.com. Stir fry, chicken and rice, and tears. So many tears, instead of soy sauce. It's lower sodium. Pour dessert, flour tortilla with butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Cream cheese and jam is also really good on a tortilla. Only had the chance because we got cream cheese from the food bank that one time, but damn. Ramen, drained with no broth, with poor man's pad thai sauce. Basically, you mix a tablespoon of peanut butter into a small ramekin with enough soy sauce and sriracha to be able to thoroughly mix it into a smooth sauce. Dump it over the cooked ramen and baby, you've got a stew going. It tastes good, it's got a bit of protein, bit of fat, bit of carbs, little sweet, little heat. It's not the greatest nutrition you could eat, but it's way better for you than Oreos, and if you want to clean up the macros a little, you can sub PB2 for the peanut butter and coconut aminos for the soy, and that'll cut the fat and sodium in at least half. And it's vegan, if you care about that at all. I've been making this basically exactly the same way, and I can't recommend enough adding any kind of acid, whether lemon or lime or whatever. It really turns it up to 11 by making it less heavy and having more complex flavors. Also, put an egg on top. Just do it. Potatoes in every way possible. Wow, so many fellow spud enthusiasts. To set the record straight, I'm a female, French by blood, raised by Lithuanians, and not an Irishman. I see ya, latkeys. Serious answer here, get a can of black beans and some cheap salsa. Put the drained beans and some salsa in a skillet and let it cook for like 10 minutes. Crack a couple of eggs and let them poach in the beans. Serve with cheap bread or tortilla. All very cheap ingredients and it's super high in protein, so it's filling and healthy. You can also saute in any veggies you have sitting around, or put in whatever spices you have lying about. A couple of people are mentioning shakshuka. That's where I got the inspiration for this dish. My boyfriend doesn't like tomatoes, but we love Tex-Mex flavors, so I made up this altered version for us. Macaroni and cheese. Grilled cheese sandwich. Okay, I'm getting lots of replies from people making some fancy as all heck sandwiches, and don't get me wrong, I'm not mad about it, but a cheap grilled sandwich made with stale white Wonder Bread, I can't believe it's not butter, and some Kraft singles holds a special place for me. Ramen with a side of ramen flushed down with water. Save some crunchy ramen in the beginning, then sprinkle it on top at the end. Picante beef is the best flavor. Poor man's stew. Ground beef, potatoes, and onions. Let the potatoes and onions cook with the already cooked ground beef in a pot of water. Add salt and pepper to taste. Yum. Quesadilla. Basically just a more ethnic grilled cheese. Straight up peanut butter. Don't say you've never filled up that way. It can be a great survival food too. Take a jar of peanut butter, throw in some nuts and raisins and toss it in a backpack and you have a delicious, high-carb, high-protein, high-energy snack that can keep you going for days in a tough situation. A grilled cheese sandwich with a side of Campbell's bean and bacon soup. It'll set you back about at $1.50. Campbell's tomato soup is also an excellent side. Walk-in tacos. Basically, you get a snack-size bag of your favorite chips and fill it with taco meat, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream, and stuff like that. Now you have walk-in tacos. For those wondering or asking, I was showed this a few years ago by my cousin that worked for a traveling carnival. We've used everything from Yardbirds to McDonald's patties for the meat. Walkin' taco or taco in a bag, walkin' taco sounds better in my opinion. It's like BK. It's have it your way. Make it how you want. Yes. Classic Midwestern dish. Classy and convenient. Here's some tips though. Use Doritos. Crush them up before you put anything in. You don't need cheese when using Doritos unless you want that extra cheesy goodness, which I highly recommend. And for some reason, they just taste better when you eat it with a plastic fork. They just do. Beans on toast with some grated cheese on top. A campfire and a can of beans. Hopefully baked beans, but whatever the food shelf is providing that day is all right. I put some mac and cheese inside a grilled cheese sandwich. Delicious. The narrator can confirm that at his gamer bar lately, he had a gourmet fried sandwich that weirdly had mac and cheese inside, and it was actually damn good. And I'm certain that a non-gourmet version would hold true to the same standard. Beans and rice. You can get massive bags of dried rice and beans for pretty cheap at wholesale stores, and a big bag will last you a long time. Add a little butter and some cheap spices, and you've got yourself a tasty and healthy meal. Sleep. I've had to sleep through dinner and breakfast many times. Hope all of you who are currently in that situation will have better days. They're coming, trust me. Crap on a shingle, aka creamed chipped beef on toast. Such an underrated dish. Is it a Midwestern dish? Because some people look like I'm crazy when I mention it. Add some peas to throw in some extra fiber. Shepherd's pie. Canned corned beef hash. Enough salt to pickle ya, but absolutely delicious on buttered bread. Mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs. Did nobody else have rice with ketchup or butter growing up? I forgot about buttered rice. But with a little butter, flour, and either milk or broth, you can have rice and gravy. Cheap, delicious calories. 333 chili. Super easy, cheap, and satisfying. I say 333 because all it needs is 3 kinds of canned beans, peppers, and 3 onions. I use a serrano pepper as well because I like the heat. Add 2 tins of canned tomatoes, chop and mix everything, let it simmer on a stove uncovered for at least 1.5 hours. The longer the better. Add any kind of broth as needed. It's filling, cheap, and awesome. Serves 4 or more. A perfectly soft-boiled egg. Can I offer you a nice egg in these trying times? Boil 1 cup of white rice for 20 cents, add cilantro if you have it, prepare 2 cups of black beans, it's about $1.39, soak 24 hours or cook in an Instapot from dry. Melt a tablespoon of neutral oil of choice. I prefer olive, but butter works. Olive oil is pricey, so butter is a go for a poverty budget. Dice a half onion, 25 cents, and fry in oil. When translucent, add soaked beans to the fried onions, stir in oregano, cayenne, chili pepper, cumin, black pepper, garlic salt, and a teaspoon of lime juice concentrate. Let the flavors mingle until cooked. This will make you a dish that's under 50 cents total per serving. Scoop beans over some rice, and as an option, you can top it with a little cheese and sour cream or diced tomato for 75 cents. The upfront cost really isn't much, and you can stock it in bulk. 1 batch costs about $3 and makes 4 servings. Don't skimp on the oregano. You can get a lot of it for cheap. Start grating your own cheese. That bagged crap is stupid expensive. You can get a lot more variety, better flavor, and more volume if you grate your own cheese. I used to love pork and beans as a kid. Sweet beans and cut-up hot dogs. Loco Moco. White rice, hamburger patty, gravy with an egg on top. Chili on baked potatoes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Every cuisine in the world's poor people dishes are usually their best ones. Maybe I'm just generalizing. For example, white gazpacho from Spain was a peasant meal. The base of it is garlic, stale bread soaked in water to soften it, and almonds. American barbecue could actually be the poster child of this idea, in my opinion. A basic Korean meal can be very cheap. For example, white rice, kimchi, doenjang jjigae, similar to miso soup, some other side dishes like prepared bean sprouts, pickled radish, and cucumbers, fried egg on top of the rice, bonus if you have some dried seaweed to wrap the rice in with your chopsticks. This is a bit basic, but mixing all of the banchan and rice with some red pepper paste or gochujang and sesame oil, you can make a bibimbap, which is awesome. Cacio e pepe. It's just spaghetti with a sauce that you make from reserved pasta water, a crap ton of parmesan, and black pepper. It's delicious, and since the cheese is going to be melty, you don't need high quality. just one step above sawdust shaker cheese. French omelettes: eggs, milk, butter, salt and pepper. It does require some practice to make them right, but after you do, you'll have a quick and delicious meal in a second. I forgot to put the word cream after milk actually. The ingredients are eggs, milk, cream, butter, salt and pepper. Also, I know some places will say it doesn't need milk cream, but the scary Frenchman who taught me this dish says it goes with milk cream, so I'm sticking with it. Eggs in a basket, sometimes called toad in the hole. Cut out a circle in a piece of bread, toast it up in a pan with melted butter, crack an egg in the middle, and use bread remnants to dip in the runny yolk. So simple, but it feels fancy. What is this? I think you'll find toad in the hole is actually sausage in Yorkshire pudding. In the UK, what you're describing is called egg in the hole. That is the narrator's experience as well. Although it does make me wonder why toad in the hole is called toad in the hole, as there is no hole cut in anything, nor is the meat remotely reptilian. Up next, a mega comment about how to get the most out of your rice. Congee. Add rice and lots of water to a pot, keep it plain or sprinkle some chicken bouillon powder and fresh ginger slices. Cook until it reaches creamy porridge consistency. Top your bowl with scallions. I make this when I'm feeling sick since it's easy on the stomach. And if you'd like to level up the dish, here are some tips from my Cantonese grandma who's been doing this for the last 60 years. You can marinate the rice in sesame oil overnight in the fridge, just enough to coat the rice granules. It makes it a better consistency. Short grain rice is best. For a bad time, use basmati or brown rice. Scallions are awesome. Coriander is good too if you're one of those lucky people who's blessed with the genes to enjoy it. Deep-fried garlic mince brings all the boys to the yard. If you're feeling rich, throw in a bunch of dried scallops. If you're using dried scallops, don't add any salt until the scallops are properly cooked. Dried scallops have quite a lot of salt content and it all gets released once they soften up. Drop an egg in right at the end and let the heat cook it. Has to be a room temperature egg, otherwise it won't cook well enough. Best is when the yolk is almost runny. Drop in some Chinese rice wine at the end for something different. If you're feeling lazy, throw it all in the rice cooker using 3 times the amount of water you'd normally use. When it's done, it'll still look like rice, but you'll have to stir it up a little to make it into a congee. Add boiling water for the desired consistency. If you have to boil it on the stove, use high heat, not low. High heat makes it boil and keeps it circulating. Low heat lets it sink to the bottom and hence is more prone to burning. Once it burns, the whole pot of congee is ruined. If you absolutely have to salvage burnt congee, do not scrape the bottom because scraping will release even more burnt congee. Add lots of ginger and garlic to try masking the burnt flavor. But I think you're better off disposing it and chalking it up to a lesson learned. Congee is so cheap and life's too short for bad congee. If you have roast duck, save the bones and neck. Boil them into a broth and use the broth to make the congee. Add leftover shredded roast duck meat to top it off. If you can get some bacon bones, boil them into a broth and use them to make the congee. You're having prawns? Why not save the shells and heads and boil them into broth to make the congee with as well? In fact, use any broth to make the congee. It's better than using water by itself. Chicken bouillon works, but it has less oomph to it. Another way to add flavor is to boil some chicken breast and use the broth to make congee. Shred said chicken breast into thin strips to be added later to the mix. This makes a healthier congee with very little chicken fat and lots of protein. Crispy youtiao goes very well with congee. That crispy youtiao coated in soft, tasty bits of congee gives a very sensual play on the mouthfeel. Pepper is very good with congee. Doesn't matter black or white. I suggest getting your hands on some Sarawak pepper. They're the best. Some people like their congee spicy. I suggest getting some chili oil and adding it to your liking. If you like century eggs, it goes very well with congee too. If you don't like century eggs, why not crack in a salted duck egg? If you've got some boiling hot congee, throw in some thinly sliced fresh fish fillet and let the heat cook them away from the stove. We'll almost always cook them to a perfect consistency. Usually use Harawan fish, but I suppose salmon would work as well. Serve congee in clay pots if you have some. Clay pots retain heat very well and keep congee hot longer. But if you do the above, I don't think your congee will stay in your bowl for very long. Congee brings back memories of times when I was too sick to properly stomach solid food. It's become a comfort food now. Grandma died from cervical cancer a few years ago. Ladies, please go get your screening done and get your Gardasil vaccination. Cervical cancer is easily preventable these days. Grilled cheese and cream of tomato soup. Mac and cheese with ground beef, taco mix, and baked in a pie plate with breadcrumbs and extra cheese on top. It's just amazing. Definitely rice and beans or lentils, but for a fancy-looking cheap dish, stuffed squash. Get a big squash, cut it in half, scoop the seeds out and fill the cavity with whatever stuffing your heart desires and circumstance will allow. Stale bread, cornbread, cooked rice, barley, or really any grain, and just boxed stuffing. A bit of browned sausage can be nice, but you don't need a ton. Some salt and bits of herb like parsley or thyme if you have them. Bake it and you've got something that looks nice but didn't cost much at all. Eggs cooked in many different ways. I prefer omelettes with chopped veggies. Sloppy joes. Cornbread and pinto beans. I go with southern buttermilk cornbread and la preferida pinto frioles. The narrator really wants to try more cornbread. It's one of those things that we just don't do in Northern Europe at all. Like, it has to be good to have stayed in cuisine despite being regarded as a pretty humble dish, right? SOS. Hamburger steak on mashed potatoes and toast with brown gravy. That's much different from the SOS that I grew up with. The one I'm familiar with is also called cream chipped beef. It's chipped beef with white cream gravy over it, usually served over toast. Burritos. Rice, butter, and cheese. Chicken-flavored ramen. Tuna casserole. Cigarette and coffee. Cheese on toast. Toast one side of your bread under the grill on a medium-high heat, flip the bread, put your cheese on it, whack it under the grill until it's melted. Tastes better than a cheese toasty, but it's less cheese per slice. For sandwiches, ham, cheese, and salami is filling as frick on the right bread and costs next to nothing. Sausage pilaf. This recipe is cheap as dirt and I can recommend a few different things for it, but let's see what you think. Get cheap sausages, the kind you can oven cook. Chicken, leek, and sweet corn pasta. And then there's lapskaus, a Norwegian stew. Get carrots, a Swede, lots of floury potatoes, and whatever cheap yet flavorful meats you can find. Anything with hot sauce, pretty much. 2 scrambled eggs, a wrap, and some hot sauce, and I'm good until lunch. The poor man's steak, seasoned hamburger patty with sautéed mushrooms and onions on top. Do you know a ratatouille was originally a poor man's meal? Well, you'd have to be pretty poor to eat a DVD. Hamburger helper or hot dogs and beans. I grew up with this stuff in Detroit. We were dirt poor, but my mother always found ways for us to have a good meal. Eggs scrambled into rice and a little bit of hoisin sauce, filling as frick. Asians have got it figured out, man. Can of soup and boiled potato. Little Caesar's pizza. Not the best pizza, but $10 for 2 large pizzas is a pretty good price, and it doesn't taste half bad. Bean burritos and quesadillas. Bonus points if you find a hot sauce that you really like. It's called Poor Knights, and it's basically cheese with toast or bread in a pan. Pretty tasty. Tater tot casserole. Microwaved baked potato. My dad lived on his own from age 14, and he had all kinds of poor man dinners like boiled chicken, and it's as bad as it sounds. My absolute favorite was pasta shells with cheese whiz and canned tomatoes. When I was strapped, I'd buy a 99-cent box of mac and cheese from Aldi along with a $1.45 jar of pasta sauce. I'd make the pasta, stir in the sauce, and add the powdered cheese. The sauce took the place of the milk and the butter, which were too expensive at the time. I could get 2 or 3 meals out of that. These suggestions have made me realize my family was poor when I was growing up. There's nothing like a campfire and a can of beans. Tom Waits' lucky day. Spam casserole. I don't know the recipe, but it's spam, elbow macaroni, and a cream sauce of some sorts. It was stupid cheap to make, and my mum made it a lot when I was a kid. I didn't know what poor was, and I didn't know that was us, but I do know we stopped eating it around the age of 17 or so. That's when I was about 23. My mum was like, "Oh, you should come over for dinner. What do you want me to make?" I thought about it and was like, "Ooh, that's spam casserole. Not had that one in ages." She was shocked and asked why I wanted it. I told her I loved that growing up. She then informed me she only made it because we were broke as frick and it was all she could afford to make, and she felt guilty for years that she made it so often. I simply told her, "Wow, I loved it. I thought we had it so often because I liked it." Oatmeal with banana and milk if available. Well, fried spam, scrambled eggs and rice. White trash fried rice, as I call it. If you want, you can throw in any veggies you have on hand. Personally, I just like the 3 main ingredients, maybe a little bit of soy sauce on the rice. Project donuts. Take some biscuit dough, cut holes in the center, fry it in a skillet, sprinkle some powdered sugar or spread cake icing on top. It's better than Dunkin' Donuts. Also, you can make donut holes out of the center. What do you think is the best joke on the internet? Why do scuba divers fall out of the boat backwards? Because if they fell forward, they'd still be in the boat. What's the main difference between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer? The taste. A man was driving down the road and his car breaks down near a monastery. He goes to the monastery, knocks on the door and says, "My car broke down. Do you think I could stay the night?" The monks graciously accept him, feed him his dinner, and even fix his car. As the man tries to fall asleep, he hears a strange sound. A sound unlike anything he's ever heard before. The sirens that nearly seduced Odysseus into crashing his ship comes to mind. He doesn't sleep that night. He tosses and turns, trying to figure out what could possibly be making such a seductive sound. The next morning, he asks the monk what the sound was, but they say, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." Distraught, the man is forced to leave. Years later, after never being able to forget the sound, the man goes back to the monastery and pleads for the answer again. The monks reply, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." The man says, "If the only way I can find out what's making the beautiful sound is to become a monk, then please make me a monk." The monks reply, "You must travel the earth and tell us how many blades of grass there are and the exact number of grains of sand. When you find these answers, you will have become a monk." The man sets about his task. After years of searching, he returns as a grey-haired old man and knocks on the door of the monastery. A monk answers. He's taken before a gathering of all the monks. "In my quest to find what makes that beautiful sound, I traveled the earth and found what you asked for. By design, the world is in a state of perpetual change. Only God knows what you ask. All a man can know is himself, and only then if he is honest and reflective and willing to strip away self-deception." The monk replies, "Congratulations, you've become a monk. We shall now show you the way to the mystery of the secret sound." The monks lead the man to a wooden door, where the head monk says, "The sound is beyond that door." The monks give him the key and he opens the door. Behind the wooden door is another door made of stone. The man is given the key to the stone door and he opens it, only to find a door made of ruby. And so it went that he needed keys to doors of emerald, pearl, and diamond. Finally, they came to a door made of solid gold. The sound had become very clear and definite. The monk says, "This is the last key to the last door." The man is apprehensive. His life's wish is behind that door. With trembling hands, he unlocks the door, turns the knob, and slowly pushes the door open. Falling to his knees, he's utterly amazed to discover the source of that haunting and seductive sound. But of course I can't tell you what it is because you're not a monk. I think I hate you for submitting this. Well done on making me narrate that on a rough morning, you absolute sack of steaming turd. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. I promise I'll be mostly sticking to much shorter jokes from now, folks. Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. What does a robot do during a one-night stand? He nuts and bolts. Two whales walk into a bar. The bartender asks, "What can I get for you two?" One whale goes, The second whale says, "I'll go home, Frank, you're drunk." Two men are sitting at a bar at the top of the Empire State Building when the first man turns to the other and says, "You know, last week I discovered that if you jump from the top of this building, the winds around the building are so intense that by the time you fall to the 10th floor, they'll carry you around the building and back into a window." The bartender just shakes his head in disapproval while wiping the bar. The second guy says, "What are you, nuts? There's no way that could happen." "No, it's true," the first man says. "Let me prove it to you." He gets up from the bar, jumps over the balcony, and plummets towards the street below. As he nears the 10th floor, the high winds whip him around the building and back into the 10th floor window, and he takes the elevator back up to the bar. He meets the second man, who looks quite astonished. "You know, I saw that with my own eyes, but that must have been a one-time fluke." "No, I'll prove it again," says the first man as he just automatically leaps over the railing. Just as he's hurtling towards the street, the 10th floor wind gently carries him around the building and into the window. Once upstairs, he urges his fellow drinker to try it. "Ah, well, why not?" the second guy says. "It works, I'll try it." He jumps over the balcony, plunges downward, passes the 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th floors, and hits the sidewalk with a splat. Back upstairs, the bartender turns to the other drinker and says, "You know, Superman, you're a real jerk when you're drunk." I think this is one of my favorites. "Doctor, will I be okay?" "I don't know, Mercury is in Uranus right now." "I don't do astronomy, doctor." "Me neither, my thermometer just broke." Did you hear about the cheese factory in France that exploded? Debris was everywhere. Oh, here's a classic. So a grandpa takes his grandson out fishing. The grandpa pulls out a smoke and lights it. The kid asks, "Hey grandpa, can I have one?" Grandpa says, "Does your Johnson touch your butt, kid?" And the kid says, "Well, no." And grandpa says, "There's your answer, you're too young." Then grandpa pulls out some whiskey and takes a few pulls of the bottle. The kid asks, "Hey, could I have a drink of that, grandpa?" Grandpa again asks, "Does your eggplant touch your butt?" "Well, no, it doesn't," says the kid. Grandpa says, "Well, there's your answer." So the kid pulls out some cookies and starts snacking away on them, and Grandpa says, "Ah, gee, kiddo, those cookies look pretty good. Could I have one?" So the kid says, "Does your Johnson touch your butt, Grandpa?" And Grandpa says, "Why, yes, it does." And the kid says, "Good, then you can go F yourself then." I was in the office today and the cleaning lady asked if I wanted to smoke Mary J with her after work. I turned her down. I don't really like high-maintenance women. Two nuns were sitting on a park bench when an undressed man runs by. One of the nuns had a stroke, but the other one couldn't reach. Four older gents who were college buddies met for dinner for the first time in 20 years. After ordering, one of the men got up to use the bathroom. One of the men boasted about his son. "My son's so successful. He started at the bottom, valeting cars, worked and saved money, and he just started his second dealership. For his friend's birthday, he bought him a Maserati." All the men clapped and nodded. The next man said about his son, "My son's so smart, he started as a junior aircraft technician at a small charter, pulled himself through engineering, and he has his own private jet company with millions in revenue. For a friend's birthday, he brought his friend a twin-engine turboprop." Again, all of the men wiped tears from their eyes. The third man said about his son, "My son is a hard worker. He started mowing lawns and went into trades. He's the president of a company that builds subdivisions. For his buddy's birthday, he gave his friend a new house." All the men clapped and sat back enjoying their son's accomplishments. The fourth man came back, sat down, and asked why they were crying. After finding out, he said, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, but my son actually takes his clothes off for money, and his birthday was last month, and 3 of his clients gifted him a car, a plane, and a house." A New York stockbroker finally cashed in and decided to retire, so he bought a ranch in Montana. On day 1, he's working on the fence, and in a cloud of dust down the road comes a pickup truck, and it pulls up beside him. Out jumps a big strapping ranch cowboy. "Howdy, partner. I'm your nearest neighbor from down the road a piece. I came by to say hello and invite you to a party I'm having Saturday night." "Well, that's very nice of you. I'd be glad to attend," says the stockbroker. The big cowboy cocks his hat and says, "Well, I should tell you there's gonna be some drinking." The stockbroker says, "Well, now I've been known to enjoy a good martini or two." The cowboy then says, "Okay, well, I should warn you there might be some fighting." This takes the stockbroker back a bit, but he replies, "Well, I'm from New York. I've seen my share of fights." "Okay then," says the cowboy as he's getting back into the truck. "One more thing. There's going to be some love-making too." The stockbroker replies, Well, okay. Say, what should I wear?" The cowboy says, "Oh heck, it don't matter. It's just going to be you and me." A Buddhist walks up to a hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." Bonus for philosophy nerds. Descartes walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Hey, Descartes, I just got this new import beer in. You want to try it?" Descartes says, I think not." And he vanishes into thin air. That one is very, very good. I don't think everyone watching this channel will get it, but it's good. Or maybe this comment will make those of you who didn't get it, you can Google Descartes and laugh afterwards. We strive for education here on Am I the Genius, as ever. Stalin is sitting at his desk, busy with paperwork, when his assistant bursts into the room and says, "Comrade Stalin, there's a clairvoyant here that wants to see you. He claims he can see the future." "Send him to Gulag," says Stalin. "If he could see the future, he wouldn't have come here." Dave knows everyone there is to know. Dave was bragging to his boss one day. "You know, I know everyone there is to know. Just name someone, anyone, and I'll know them." Tired of his boasting, his boss called his bluff. "Okay, Dave, how about Tom Cruise?" "No dramas, boss. Tom and I are old friends, and I can prove it." So Dave and his boss fly out to Hollywood and knock on Tom Cruise's door. Tom Cruise shouts, "Dave, what's happening? Great to see ya. Come on in for a beer." Although impressed, Dave's boss is still skeptical. After they leave Cruise's house, he says that he thinks Dave knowing Cruise was just lucky. No, just name anyone else," Dave says. "President Obama," his boss quickly retorts. "Yep," Dave says. "Old buddies, let's fly out to Washington," and off they go. At the White House, Obama spots Dave on the tour and motions him and his boss over, saying, "Dave, what a surprise. I was just on my way to a meeting, but you and your friend come on in and let's have a cup of coffee first and catch up." Well, the boss was very shaken by now, but still not totally convinced. After they leave the White House grounds, he expresses his doubts to Dave, who again implores him to name anyone else. "The Pope," says his boss. "Sure," says Dave. "My folks are from Germany and I've known the Pope a long time. So they fly off to Rome. Dave and his boss are assembled with the masses in Vatican Square when Dave says, "This'll never work. I can't catch the Pope's eye among all these people. Tell you what, I know all the guards, so let me just go upstairs and I'll come out on the balcony with the Pope." And he disappears into the crowd headed towards the Vatican. Sure enough, half an hour later, Dave emerges with the Pope on the balcony. But by the time Dave returns, he finds out his boss has had a heart attack and is surrounded by paramedics. Working his way to his boss's side, Dave asks him, "What happened?" His boss looks up and says, "I was doing fine until you and the Pope came out on the balcony and the man next to me said, 'Who the frick's that on the balcony with Dave?'" You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. An old man and his grandson were spending some quality time together on a rainy Sunday. They'd been planning on playing football outside, but it had started raining at 8 a.m., and it was now 5 p.m. with no end in sight. So, as they were sitting inside in front of a big bay window, and Grandpa is looking out at it raining cats and dogs, says, "Wow, it's been raining all day. That's a lot of rain." And the grandson says, "Yeah, tell me something I don't know, Grandpa." So the grandfather replies, "Your grandmother's butt can take my whole fist." I mixed up the words jacuzzi and yakuza, and now I'm in hot water with the Japanese mafia. A man goes to a funeral. He asks the widow if he could say a word. He goes to the front and says, "Plethora," and sits back down. The widow leans over and whispers, "Thanks, that means a lot." Another man approaches. He'd been a close companion of the deceased. He too asks the widow if he might speak and heads to the front. "Bargain," he says. The widow pats his arm. "That means a great deal." A man comes up and asks to say a few words. The widow gives him the okay. He steps up to the mic and says, with confidence, "Water pit." The widow gives him a small smile. "Thanks, I know you mean well." Two guys are walking down the street when they see a dog licking his pecker. One guy says, "Oh, I wish I could do that." The other one replies, "Well, maybe just try petting him first." A penguin is on a long-deserved vacation from the zoo. He decides to take a road trip out west where his car breaks down. Luckily, it's right in front of a mechanic in town. He drops the car off and tells the mechanic he's going to get some lunch. It's a really hot day, so after eating, he stops by the ice cream shop for a little treat. Walking back to his car, the mechanic tells the penguin, "It looks like he blew a seal." The penguin laughs. "Oh no," he said as he wipes his mouth, "that's just ice cream." I had a song stuck in my head the other day and kept singing it out loud. My wife finally broke down and screamed, "Will you please stop singing Wonderwall?" I said, "Maybe." "I hear you, dude. I was humming the chorus to I'm a Believer around the house the other day when my wife suddenly screamed at me to knock it off. This was really out of character for her, so I just assumed she was joking. Then I saw her face." People are shocked when they find out what a terrible electrician I am. A proctologist walks into a bank. He needs to sign a document. He tries to sign, but he pulls a thermometer out of his shirt pocket. Oh crap, some butthole has my pen. "Dad, the trash man's here." "Tell him we don't need any." A man sat down at a bar and told the bartender, "I bet you $300 that I can pee into the cup all the way over there on the other side of the bar and not miss a single drop." The bartender said, "There is no way you can do that. Sure, I'll bet you $300. The man then begins to undo his pants and lets it rip. He starts peeing all over the bar, spraying on the bottles and the bartender, not making a single drip in the cup. The bartender starts smiling and laughing and says, "That's it, you owe me $300. The man then gets up and walks over to the pool table and starts laughing and shaking hands with the men standing there. He walks back to the bar, sits down and starts laughing at the bartender and hands him $300. The bartender asks, "Why are you so happy? You just lost the bet." The man said, "I'm laughing because I bet those guys over there $1,000 that I could pee all over you and your bar, and you'd still be laughing when I was done." Classic sort of bar joke. I've got to say though, that out of all the jokes I've read out, I've only read the Buddhist requesting to be made one with everything joke before. So color me impressed at how many original ones we've had. However, I can already see that at least one joke from earlier in my life is coming up, so here we go. What did the sign on the door of the brothel say? "Beat it, we're closed." I went to the zoo and saw a baguette in a cage. I asked the zookeeper about it and he told me it was bred in captivity. One day, 3 people were stuck on an island with cannibals. The cannibals said, "If you do what we say, we won't kill you." So the 3 people followed the orders of the cannibals. They said, go into the forest and pick 10 fruits of the first fruit you see. So the first person came back out of the forest with 10 apples. The cannibals said, if you put the 10 apples up your butt without making a facial expression, we'll let you live. The person then made a facial expression after the second apple, so they killed him. The second person came back out of the forest with 10 cherries. The cannibals said, put the cherries up your butt without making a facial expression. The person then started laughing at the 10th cherry, so they killed him. In heaven, the person with apples asked the person with cherries, why did you start laughing? The person replied, oh, I saw the third person coming out with pineapples. Doc, you've got to help me. I can't stop singing What's New Pussycat. Ah, that sounds like Tom Jones syndrome. Is it common? It's not unusual. What did Cinderella say when she got to the ball? I told that to my family when I was like 11. It went over well. Why did the blind man fall into the well? He couldn't see that well. This guy sees a sign, talking dog $5. He walks up and asks the man, does the dog really talk? The owner says, yep, bullcrap. The dog pipes in, oh, it's true, I can speak. Holy crap, says the first guy. Yes, I started out in the circus as a sideshow until the CIA found me. They recruited me as a spy. Nobody suspects the dog in the room is listening to state secrets. After 2 tours, I retired here in the country to live out my days. My God, man, that's the most astounding thing I've ever heard. So why the hell are you only selling him for $5? The owner says, because that dog is a liar. He didn't do any of that crap. An English job foreman is hiring, and an Irishman soon appears requesting a job. Laughing, the foreman responds, you? Hire you? I doubt you know the difference between a girder and a joist. After a moment of pondering, the Irishman responds, well, one of them fellows wrote Faust and the other wrote Ulysses. Mother Superior is sitting in the convent one night when she hears a knock at the door. She looks out at the peephole and, seeing no one, very cautiously opens the door. She's stunned to find 2 leprechauns standing meekly, hats in hand, on the steps of the nunnery. My sons, how can I help you this fine evening? Well, mother, have you any leprechaun nuns at this convent? I'm sorry, my son, we've no leprechaun nuns here. Well, mother, do you know of any leprechaun nuns anywhere? No, my son, I don't know of any in all of Ireland. And if there's none here, then there can't be any leprechaun nuns in the whole church. At this, the first leprechaun whips around, jabbing his finger at his companion. I told you you've been doing the deed with a penguin. The divorce court judge says to Mickey, now let me get this straight, Mr. Mouse. You want a divorce from your wife Minnie because she's crazy. And Mickey says, no, I never said she was crazy. I said she was effing goofy. Oh-ho! 3 men went to hell and they stood before the devil. The devil asked the first man, what did you do for a living? The man answered, I was a lumberjack. The devil said, then we will chop your manhood off. He turned to the second man, asking the same question he asked the first. I was a fireman, said the second man. Then we will burn your manhood off, said the devil. He turned to the third man, asking the same question he asked the other 2. The third man thought about it and finally answered the devil, I was a lollipop salesman. A pair of hunters from Illinois are out in the woods. Whilst descending a hill, one of them suddenly cries out in pain and falls to the bottom, clutching his chest as he hits the ground. The other hunter rushes to his side as his friend noticeably stops breathing. Pulling out his phone, he quickly dials 911. After a few rings, the dispatcher picks up. 911, what's your emergency? The hunter replies, I'm out near Route 51. My friend has had a heart attack. I think he's dead. What do I do? The dispatcher replies, it's okay, sir. Can you calm down and make sure that he's dead? The hunter replies, well, okay. The dispatcher hears some rustling over the phone, followed by the resounding boom of a 12-gauge. The hunter comes back on the line, saying, okay, now what? This joke is courtesy of my stepfather and his old drinking buddy, the men of many laughs. What do you get if you insert human DNA into a goat? You get kicked out of the petting zoo. What did the fish say when it hit the wall? Damn. That's my uncle's only joke. 2 windmills are standing in a field when one of them asks, what's your favorite kind of music? The other one says, I'm a big metal fan. There was this one guy who got a job at the pickle factory. He came home from his first day and his wife asked him how it was. He said it was great, but he couldn't stop watching the pickle slicer. He said he knew it was wrong, but he couldn't stop thinking about putting his trouser snake into the pickle slicer. His wife thought that was a little bit weird. Time went on, but the woman's husband only became more withdrawn. He was obsessed. Finally, she just confronted him. Look, I can tell this thing is eating you alive. Ignoring it isn't working. You just have to get this out of your system. Her husband croaked out, Really? Really? She exclaimed. I want you to stay late after work after everyone else has left. Make some kind of excuse, and then when there's nobody else around, just go ahead and put it in the pickle slicer. Then you'll finally be able to move on. He silently nodded his head, thanked her, and left for work. All day, she was thinking about her husband and the difficult time he must be having. Finally, he arrived home a little later than usual. He slammed his lunch down on the kitchen table. Well, I finally did it. I put it in the pickle slicer. Really? Asked his wife. Yes, I was thinking about it all day. Then, like you said, I stayed after quitting time and people had left. But my boss came back into the factory and caught me with my member in the pickle slicer. Oh no! She exclaimed. I got fired. He responded mildly. I can see why he'd be upset, but that seems a little severe. What happened to the pickle slicer? Asked his wife. Oh, she got fired too. When did fake it until you make it backfire epically? I was in a Skype job interview that involved multiple rounds in one session. I talked to person A, then person B, and then person C. During the interview with person B, I was asked to talk about one of my weaknesses after having already talked about one of my strengths. I explained that I'm very comfortable with creative problem solving, but sometimes I take for granted that the status quo exists for a reason. Person B responded, I see your point, but I don't think that's a problem in the grand scheme of things. You seem very entrepreneurial to me, and people with that motivation have a healthy skepticism for how things have to be. So that was a pleasant thing to hear, especially in an industry that involves bringing in new business and keeping clients. I thanked person B and told him I'd never thought of myself as entrepreneurial, but there was something that felt true about that description. Cut to my interview with person C. First question, what are some words that people might use to describe you? Well, one thing I've been told is that I'm entrepreneurial. I'm less of a leader and more a collaborator. I value creativity, and I went on like that. They answered, so you've said you're entrepreneurial. What business have you started then? I might as well have quit at that point. Once I said, none. Nothing I said to person C was going to convince him that I wasn't full of crap. I told person C several projects I'd started that involved my personal initiative, taking risks and making proposals to people with the power to deny my idea or be a part of my team. The problem he seemed to have was that none of those things was literally a business. Guy I used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant. When there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time, the lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender, and a piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other one was on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit-chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who'd then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said that they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that, but they were ultimately found out. A lot of the big instances of fraud came from the fake it until you make it mentality. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos were faking the technology until they could get it to work, Fire Festival was faking it until they could get the money together, Anna Delvey did intend to make it one day, but she Ponzi'd her way through until she'd get there. Dr. Christopher Dunch, or Dr. Death, was a horrible back surgeon, but he kept operating and working on patients anyway. I think fraudsters don't really intend to hurt other people, they're just grossly incompetent and trying to cover their own butts. Yep, I think this applies to the vast majority of failed Kickstarters too. Most of them don't start off as cons, they genuinely think they're going to make their project. Then reality sets in. The narrator has backed a successful Kickstarter that then launched a sequel that fell completely apart due to mismanagement, and a lot of people are calling a fraud now, despite its proven track record of actually working out for one time, kind of. At Nelson Mandela's funeral, people took note of the sign language interpreter that just seemed to be making random hand gestures instead of actual sign language. Turns out he had made quite a few appearances previously, and nobody had caught on that he knew literally no sign language. To me, this guy is just the poster child of fake it till you make it. This is apparently really common. A sign language interpreter for the city of Tampa, Florida, was fired after it turned out that she didn't know sign language and was just signing gibberish. Among the things they signed, according to Seth Imbrino, was the following. 51 hours ago, 0-12-22, indecipherable mess of hands. Murder 3 minutes and 14 weeks ago in old, more nonsense. Murder 4-5, 55,000, plea 10, arrest murder Bush, more nonsense, 3 age 24. I mean, it made perfect sense to me. I struggle remembering names. After first introductions, especially in large groups, I tend to forget them, and as a result, I just don't use names. It usually works out well until I remember them properly, but sometimes I'm put in the spotlight and things go south real fast. Just heard a podcast about a guy who lived on an army base for 3 years posing as a soldier until he got caught due to drinking and driving. The guy apparently was well known and went so far as to brief incoming soldiers on and even responded to a bomb threat since he posed as an EOD tech. The guy responds to bomb threats and gets caught because of a DUI. My gosh. Got a job working in an insurance company reviewing contracts. I had no frickin' idea what I was doing and thought I could just learn it and I'd be fine eventually. I lasted 6 months and they kicked me out. Similar story for me. Got a job at a mortgage broker. Their limited training was meant for people who'd already worked in the industry, not newbies like me. I'm good at test taking, so I passed the mortgage originator licensing exam on the first try. Had no idea what I was doing trying to sell mortgages though, and without income from commissions, I was making minimum wage. Eventually, the boss found out I was applying to other jobs and gave me an ultimatum. Quit looking for other jobs or quit working for him. I asked him for a box to carry my stuff out. The place went under in 6 months anyway. I went on to get a job I was qualified for that I've now had for 10 years. I taught some anatomy and physiology labs to pre-nursing majors. These girls knew more about the anatomy and physiology than I did. I'm an expert in ecology, but somehow I got the job of teaching this class. I figured I'd just look at the answers on the worksheets as the semester went on. When I finally got the student feedback, it was a blow to my sense of confidence. About half of them did indeed notice that I'd just been looking at the fricking worksheet answers. As a student, I had a professor in the exact same boat. First day of class, he said, "The buttholes are making me teach this class. I have a doctorate in physics. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have the notes from the last professor. Sorry, guys." Respected the hell out of him after he did that and didn't care that he 100% just read the answers. I hired a Mandarin translator for a game I'm developing. I ran her translations through Google Translate to find they were a good match. Too good of a match. Showed it to a friend of mine who's from China. They told me the translator just Google translated everything and that the end result was barely comprehensible. I play the piano, not well, but decently. I can't sight read, but I can practice from notes and play a piece of music. My friend was studying music in college and needed to find a piano player to accompany her during class. I told her I could do it because I played piano, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I assumed I'd be able to practice the music beforehand. They wanted someone to be able to play a piece of music on the spot, sight unseen, while she sang. I couldn't do it. I faked it for 2 sessions, and the instructor told my friend she had to get another accompanist because I was just not good enough. I felt like a real D-bag, I can tell ya. Went to visit my older cousin in LA. I'm a small-town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we'd be meeting were super snobby and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from Culver, Oregon. Today I would tell him to get better friends, but when I was 18, I just wanted to fit in. We agreed that I'd tell them I'm from Portland. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older than me, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friends head off to buy shots. "So where are you from?" Portland." "Oh my god, me too." She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite, and where my parents work. Just making polite conversation on her end. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess, I made up an entire fake life story. My cousin got back to the table with the shots, and I've never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. At seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God, you don't have to drink it like you do in Culver, just chill." I did not look at the bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me up as much as I did in that moment. This reminds me of that guy who moved to a new neighborhood for just a few months and decided to take some Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to break in. They thought it was a good idea to go for a walk, and when he went outside, his new neighbor greeted him. Being on one hell of a substance and a bit of an introvert besides that, he avoided conversation by speaking French, as he knew just enough to get by, and didn't plan on staying there for an extended period of time. This went on for about 8 months, longer than he expected to stay there, and eventually the neighbor had a friend of hers over who also spoke French and tried to start up a conversation with him. That's when he was like, "Yeah, I don't speak French, sorry. I have a friend who, when she's drunk, likes to speak Spanish. Except I taught her all the Spanish she knows, and I only took high school Spanish. Anyway, I was having a barbecue and she hits it off with my friend from Peru. She speaks a little Spanish to him, they exchange numbers. She uses my wife, who speaks Spanish, to text him back and forth. They set up a date. She showed up to the bar before him. When he walked in, she gave him a hug and whispered, 'I don't speak Spanish.' And he whispered back, 'Oh, I knew the whole time.' Got a part-time job as a bartender to help with bills. Told them I knew how to bartend. I can pour a whiskey and coke and beer, so I just figured I'd pick up the rest as I went along. Right? Right? Well, the first week I was serving to get to know the menu, someone called in sick. The owner makes me bartend, so I'm doing fine, it's just beers and a few mixers. Then a party of about 40 people came in from a wedding and started asking for all these different shots and different specialty drinks. I totally crapped my pants. The narrator got through a better part of a decade in hospitality with a lot of bartending involved and still has basically zero idea how to make any cocktails, so I feel your panic, man. I was 8 years old and I told my dance teacher that I could do a backbend. I couldn't, so she moved me up a level in acro and put me in a special role for our recital. For the next week, my mum tried to help me get a backbend, but it was not happening and I had to come clean. Luckily, the teacher didn't get too mad. I had to move back down a level, but I still got to keep my special role. Okay, I guess it didn't ultimately backfire, but it's a pretty good story I was told in film school aeons ago. Back in the 80s or 90s, a guy snagged an interview for a camera operating job at a TV production company that was way above his experience level. The interviewer gave him a camera and said, "Okay, take this apart and lay it all out for me. You have 20 minutes, and left him there. After panicking for a minute, he walked down the hall, found a technician working, and asked him to take apart the camera for him, which he did. The interviewer comes back and says, "Oh, wow, good work. Now put it all back together," and goes off to put out some other fires. Our guy tracks down the tech, who obliges again, and he was hired. When I heard this story, the guy had worked in the field for 15 or so years, so I guess things worked out. That's manager material right there. He delegated. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin, but I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So whenever we had lessons, I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe by some miracle I'd get it and play normally. Well, I didn't. My parents have a video of me playing the trombone in the elementary school band concert after my flute broke and there was no other flute to give me. I told my mum before I was really nervous since I'd literally never touched a trombone. I sat down in my concert chair and the only other trombone looked at me and said, "Just slide the thing up and down and no one will ever know." And you know, I went hard. I was jamming out to Oates, Peas, Beans like I was a world-class jazz musician. My parents still bring it up that I faked it so hard. My teacher eventually caught on, and since we still had no more flutes, I was transferred to percussion and played the triangle. Yay. I worked as an accountant with a theatre background. I'm 6 years in and I'm working solo with nobody above me in the company besides the owners. I have an audit, a $16 million LOC to acquire, and another company we just purchased. This is the tipping point, I'm sure. Jesus. Is anyone on this plane a doctor? I'm a doctor. A real doctor or a PhD? I'm, PhD. I had a job that I was way underqualified for, yet I was still surprisingly given the offer. 8 months in, the fact really started to show that I wasn't the assumed genius or savior the hiring manager thought that I was. Fortunately, I got offered a different job by someone who wasn't really desperate to hire. I knew a girl who'd applied to jobs she was unqualified for, including a job at NASA and at Apple. She lied about her qualifications on her resumes. She landed several high-paying jobs but would get fired after a month or two once her co-workers realized she didn't have the skills to fulfill her duties. She'd boast on Facebook about how she'd landed her dream job every few months. Not sure what she's doing now since I haven't spoken to her in years. I believe she moved to another country. Oh, and she took credit for the Mars rover and for the Beatles on iTunes. That's amazing. I'm actually jealous of her ability to not give an F about getting caught like that. I'd be so mortified if I was found out. I'd hide in a meat locker until I withered and died of it. The humiliation would be too much to even cope with, and some people just shrug it off and are like, "Whatevs, on to my next dream job." The guys who act like they're ex-special forces on the first day of basic training because they were in Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in high school. I remember one of them saying, "I've basically already done this every year since I was a freshman," as we got off the bus. That idiot washed out by week 2. Dating a close friend that I wasn't even remotely attracted to. I thought the feelings that I was supposed to have would kick in, but they didn't. I got into a similar situation. I'd never been in a real relationship in my adult life, nor had I developed feelings for anyone since high school. Over the course of a few years, I slowly got tired of waiting for love to happen, and also felt self-conscious that I couldn't find someone I felt for. Then a friend of mine asked me out one day and I thought, oh, what the hell, coffee is cool and so is she, let's give it a try. I thought that if love wouldn't come, we could try to come to love. It didn't happen though. What did happen was a lot of hurt. She wanted more from me than I could give and at a rate faster than I could give it. I felt guilty and miserable just being with her. That I didn't feel the same way about her that she felt for me, and at the same time frustrated that she refused to take things more slowly. Those feelings never came, and after a fight, we decided to break things off. Climaxing in the bedroom. If you fake it at first, you're never going to make it. I was working on a tight budget on a magazine I edited way back when. We couldn't afford a fashion correspondent, so I did it myself under an assumed female name. I'm a man, and didn't tell anyone. Surprisingly, it was quite well received. Ran for 3 months or so before I got invited to a clothing launch. That was awkward. I mean, Fire Festival definitely comes to mind. That was just straight up fraud, though. Turns out you can't solve all your problems in your organization by telling everyone they should be more positive and only come to you with solutions to your unrealistic ideas. Who knew? Based on documentaries, it seems like they could have pulled off the cruise ship idea. There was a market for this event, people were willing to pay for it, they just needed people who knew what they were doing to execute it. I once talked my way into an internship with a neuroscience lab that regularly implanted devices into monkeys' brains as an undergraduate. Luckily, this did not result in any dead monkeys, as it had only been brought on to help process their data. However, the issue was that they were using MATLAB and I'd vastly overplayed a basic understanding of Python gleaned from a side project on algorithms back in high school. They also simultaneously tried to give a crash course in neuroscience to little old freshman me so that I could be vaguely familiar with the data I was working with. Fun fact, brain surgery is not easy to learn. Surprise! Yes, I was politely asked to leave after about 2 or 3 months of banging my head against the wall. Pretty sure I wasn't able to contribute a single line of code or useful data analysis to their project. I did get a cool ceramic monkey mug out of it though, which was nice. I mean, hey, that sounds like a nice mug though. So it really depends on your definition of making it. Some people in life will never achieve a monkey mug. Be proud of that. Not my story, but a senior back in my high school used to talk about how tough he was and how he was a black belt in karate and had plenty of boxing experience. He even brought his black belt, which I'm convinced wasn't actually his, to school one day to show it off. He eventually got the reputation of someone who was not to be effed with. He was a beefy guy, sort of a meathead. Anyhow, fast forward a bit and he was having a heated argument with the sophomore in the hallway. People were gathering all around to watch the drama unfold. Things escalated and he pushed the sophomore kid hard. The sophomore immediately responds with a punch square to the senior guy's nose, and he drops like a sack of potatoes. And then this black belt karate expert starts frickin' crying. I'd like to tell you that this was the end of the fight, but it wasn't. He gets back up, blood dripping from his nose, and swings at the sophomore with quite possibly the worst punch I've ever seen. Tears and blood are dripping off his face as he's throwing some huge toddler tantrum, just swinging his arms like a windmill and missing every punch. Some teachers came and broke up the fight, and both of them got suspended. The guy never bragged about his fighting experience again after that, and sort of flew under the radar for the rest of the year. When I thought I was cool enough to eat edibles with no tolerance, in Colorado before the airport to go back home. It hit me during the security checkpoint. The pressure behind my eyes began to build. The strange feeling of having to go number 2 traveled from my head to my toes, and at this point I knew I'd taken too much. I had sunglasses on, so only having to deal with security for a few moments, I was actually able to get through this with little problems. I had an hour and a half before my plane boarded. My brother met a girl. He'd also eaten edibles but had a tolerance, and was walking around with her while I was too high to function. The terminal was full, no seats anywhere. No problem, I'll just sit awkwardly on the floor the wrong way and stare at these people. Sir, are you okay? One of them asks. My sunglasses were on, so I tried to pretend not to hear them. Why are you staring at me? This chick beckons. I realized my sunglasses are minimum shading, so they could definitely see my eyes just staring into them. Sorry, there is nowhere to sit, I managed to say back. My anxiety at this point is through the roof, so I apologize and find somewhere else to lay down in the terminal. I find a spot near the front of the terminal, near the boarding area and help desk, so if I take a nap, I know I'll be woken up by the line that forms and maybe someone will help me. There's maybe 50 to 60 people near me, all in the rows of seating, and I position myself legs first at them, with my head on my backpack, and I take a nap. I don't know how long I napped for, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I woke up startled to an extremely loud sound. It sounded like a plane had hit the building from the vibration. Turns out I'd let out the loudest and most pungent butt guff I've ever heard deep out of my insides. I don't move. I have sunglasses on still, and I'd forgotten the encounter with the chick earlier, so I act like I'm asleep. I blasted maybe 10 people directly with my toot, and all 10 of them got up and moved. Immediately. The terminal is shaken up, the laughs from further out are deep, and everyone is looking at me. The cute girls I noticed on my way in are pointing and laughing at me. The airport workers left the stand and are staring at me talking into their walkie-talkies, laughing. I didn't move until the plane boarded, and in line everyone was still talking about it, and the staff couldn't look me in the face when I had to go through the desk with my ticket. In short, edibles made me an idiot, and I cleared a row of terminal seating with a pungent gas blast while pretending to be asleep. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is you do make it, because when you fake it to make it, you still have to fake it to keep it. I'm still in the same career field, faking that I care about numbers and competition and wearing nice clothes. Advice to my younger self, if you have to fake it till you make it, you don't want to make it. When someone asks if I've seen a movie, and I lie and say yes to fit in. When they ask me for my favorite part or my opinion on one other part, I'm exposed. Getting an internship and realizing I don't know what the frick I'm doing, and I had to learn a lot real fast before they caught on. My first week sucked at maintaining consistent communication, and my manager, very professionally, reamed me out over the phone, and after he hung up, I cried in an office room for an hour. But I never made that mistake again. Tried to power my way through undiagnosed PTSD. It got 100 times worse. Real recovery does require you to face the difficult situations, but in a specific way. Trying to force yourself to get over it will convince your subconscious that the thing is indeed bad. On the flip side, laughter yoga is the most effective fake it until you make it that I've ever encountered. Pretending to laugh until you feel so ridiculous you really do laugh? It's pretty much an instant mood boost. What cliché, outdated advice is complete bullcrap these days? Only use the internet after 6 because it's free then. I got this advice in the mid-2000s, and with the phone company would only use the internet after 6 p.m., so it's bizarre to think that that was ever a thing. You should learn how to use the card catalog at your local library. If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again. If you need help, dial your operator. My grandma told me that to find where a restaurant was, you looked up their phone number in the yellow pages, called them, and asked for directions. As someone who worked as a restaurant hostess before, the amount of people that actually asked for directions was honestly astonishing. There were also a lot of people that asked for the address. My grandma was advised to drink Guinness when pregnant because it was iron-rich and she was a little anemic. She got the same way in her last year of life and took great pleasure in reminding us all that she needed her medicinal Guinness. When you get near the end of pregnancy, the baby will move less because they run out of room. That is some outdated and dangerous advice. Any change in normal movements or reduction in movements should be checked out ASAP by a midwife or doctor. When on vacation, it's unsafe to carry cash. Use traveler's checks instead. American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them. I remember getting traveler's checks on the first big trip I took without my family, only to then find out that practically nowhere took traveler's checks, and then when they did, you got your change back as cash anyway. It was in the year 2000, which was very much a transitional time where the old ways hadn't quite been replaced yet. I was 18, just out of school and traveling to the UK for an extended time. Travelers' checks were already on their way out, but were heavily advertised even on TV as, use them like currency, it's so much safer. Nobody told me that I could just exchange them at my bank, and this was at a time when all the information of the world wasn't readily available at any time from my pocket. So it ended up being an extreme hassle trying to find places to cash these things, since most places just didn't take them. So when I got the cash as change anyway, my thoughts were just, if I'm just going to end up carrying around cash anyway, why did I go through all the hoops, trials, and tribulation to have these traveler's checks? There were still mentions of traveler's checks in a lot of European restaurants and tourist stands when the narrator did his overseas trip in the early 2010s. I don't think I've seen any since then, although my good friend Google has more or less told me that any that exist are still technically valid, even if they aren't issued as much anymore. Now you can buy a sort of prepaid traveler's check gift card these days, which works more or less like a credit card. The week before I left for college, my dad bought a cheap electric etcher. He etched my social security number onto my TV and bike and a couple of other things. That way, if they were stolen and recovered, I could prove they were mine. Probably not done today. Holy cow, my dad did the same thing, and I thought it was just some madness he came up with. It's amazing to think that putting your SSN out there was commonplace dad wisdom one time. Always keep a quarter on you in case you need to make a call. I'm old enough to remember when a payphone call still cost a dime. Friends' parents were really annoyed when the price went up, and they had to give each of their kids a quarter for an emergency phone call instead of a dime. That call had better be a real emergency in that case. Be kind. Please rewind. Nobody's going to pay you to stare at a computer screen all day, said my mom in 1996 at the dawn of the internet. I was working on my computer science degree from 94 to 98. Shortly after graduating, I was visiting my family, and one of my uncles pulled me aside and said, "My son wants to do this computer thing. You do the computer thing, right? Can he actually get paid for it?" I responded with the fact that my first job out of college was making $48K a year as a junior developer, and to my family that's a lot of money for a first-time job. He raised his eyebrows and nodded. My cousin, his son, did not end up doing the computer thing, however. It is not advised to square dance on your period. One of my favorite videos from the 1940s on advice for girls on puberty. The Story of Menstruation, 1946. My mother-in-law told me that I should never lift anything while on my period because the strain will cause my uterus to fall out as well. In the original Boy Scouts handbook, if I recall, the way to deal with a self-deleting person who threw themselves onto train tracks was to jump on top of them and restrain their extremities within the confines of the rails and allow the train to simply pass over them. However, as far as I'm aware, most modern trains have much lower clearances and have monitoring and other equipment jutting from the bottom, leaving clearances of mere inches. How common was self-deletion by train that it needed to be in the goddamn Boy Scout handbook? Regularly clean out the ball and rollers on your mouse. If the picture on your computer monitor is discolored or distorted, try pressing the degausser button. Make sure to keep spare change on you for the payphone, just in case. If a high school student has a pager, he's probably a substance dealer. Yeah, they actually told us this at my high school. I went to middle school back when pagers were a thing as well, and they were banned in my school. A girl I knew had an insulin pump for her diabetes, which looks a lot like a pager, and a witch of a teacher tried to take it from her thinking it was a pager. The teacher refused to believe that it was an insulin pump, or possibly didn't know what an insulin pump was, and either sent the girl to the office or gave her a detention. When her parents found out about the whole thing, they came down on that school with the fury of 1,000 titans. I don't know specifically what the parents said or did, but they put the fear of God into them so hard that the girl essentially became invincible. She could have opened a brothel in the library and actually started dealing, and the administration wouldn't have said a thing. I was given a What to Expect When You're Expecting book, printed in the early or mid-70s, and boy, that thing has some gems in it. Up to 5 glasses of wine a day is safe. At least 2 are recommended. Up to 4 hard alcoholic beverages a week is okay. Snowsuits and car seats to keep babies warm in the car. Natural feeding is okay, but formula is better because it's scientifically better, and chest feeding should only be done if you're not able to afford formula. Up to 2 ounces of water beginning at 8 weeks, maybe 6. Up to half a packet of cigarettes a day is alright. The book also glorified the husband stitch. Google that if you want to hate the patriarchy. Too much cardio, more than 20 minutes of mild to moderate exercise a day, or actual hard exercises at all increases stillbirths and SIDs afterwards. When my brother was just a little baby, right at the start of the 2000s, the doctors told my parents to have him avoid commonly allergenic foods. When he was 2, he had peanuts. My parents didn't think anything of it as they'd waited to give him anything like that for a couple of years. But he had an allergic reaction, and they rushed him to the hospital. He'd developed a life-threatening allergy to peanuts and tree nuts. 2 years later, I was born. Same deal, I wasn't given nuts, though I was tested when I was around 4 with no sign of an allergy. So I went on living my life without any nuts whatsoever, not because I have an allergy, but because my brother had one. So in 5th grade, I was given a granola bar at baseball practice. I didn't know it had peanuts in it, but I asked my dad to take me home because I felt horrible. I had an extremely sore throat. He assumed I just didn't want to be there and to play video games or something. But my paranoid mum, you can imagine why, asked me if I had anything to eat. I had another test, and sure enough, I had a life-threatening allergy to peanuts and tree nuts. Not life-threatening the first time, usually. It turns out, after more recent studies, the exact opposite is supposed to be done to young children. They must eat all kinds of foods that are commonly allergenic so as to make their bodies used to said food, and much less likely to develop an allergy. If you're wondering, me and my brother underwent an experimental new treatment over the past couple of years called oral immunity therapy, or OIT. We now take daily doses of around 5 peanuts and other nuts we're allergic to. Now we can eat anywhere we want without needing to carry epinephrine. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. Well, all the stuff about pursuing girls that are playing hard to get certainly hasn't aged well. If you're into a guy, play hard to get. Boys love a challenge. I always knew that advice was horrible, toxic bullcrap in my teens, but I thought I was just easy or slutty for not wanting to play games with any guy I liked. Turns out I was just a normal, functioning human being that wanted to have an actual conversation with someone I might want to date. What do you know? You know, what really hasn't aged well is the fact that my mother was the one who gave me that kind of advice. My father wasn't around, so she gave me some of those typical talks growing up. My mother said I had to learn that sometimes no means no, and sometimes no means keep trying. I had to figure out the difference. My grandfather said that was stupid and don't put up with women that play games. He was a straightforward kind of guy. Luckily, I took his advice. It made much more sense to me and it was easier. Good to know that even when that bullcrap was being peddled, there were smart people in both genders who instinctively knew it was nonsense. Good for them. I wish we could fully excise it once and for all because we're still dealing with the ramifications today. If a video game doesn't work at first, just blow on it. Ooh, that savings account is a good investment, what with the 0.05 interest and all. Don't talk to strangers on the internet. Also, don't meet or date strangers from the internet. I was an early pioneer here. I met my now husband online in 1999. It was scandalous and risky back then. Lol, I said to my mum. Meeting a guy in a bar or a gym is safe, is it? At least the guys online had their crap enough together to get online back then. It wasn't something everyone did back then. Oh, if you want to use the internet, make sure no one's using the landline. To pay for college, just work part-time at a restaurant waiting tables. Then you can avoid all of that student debt. When people say, just be patient and love will find a way, this was said in a time when people were outside a lot more. Nowadays, someone can go to work and go home and sit at their computer every day for years without ever being close to finding someone. I think nowadays you have to go out of your way to find someone, or at the very least go out of your bubble and be social. Adding to this, there's a concept in sociology called the third place. The first place is home, the second work. Basically, you have a home community and a work community. The third place used to be things like churches, social clubs, and fraternities, essentially a revolving door of new people. But we haven't really replaced those things since they fell out of style. Most people only have 2 places, which makes meeting new people and being involved with your community, not just in, immensely difficult. It's also why, for a lot of people, it was so much easier to make new friends and meet new people when they were still going to school. School was your third place when you were young. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Just show up at the office with a resume and don't leave until you get an interview. One of my favorite Reddit stories from the last year was a guy who posted about how his father, laid off due to COVID-19, told him, the lazy son, how he was going to show him how to do it, made his decision about what place he was now going to work for, and basically burst into the manager's office with the "I'm not leaving until you hire me" shtick. He was arrested. The guy who wrote about it noted that in the 3 weeks since the event, anytime it came up, the dad insisted it was a misunderstanding and the company would come around any day now. That it's never a good idea to wear a mask to the bank, although that's only old-fashioned now due to pandemic-related reasons. If they say no the first time, just keep trying. My dad accidentally raised me really well in that respect. If you don't hear yes, the answer is no. If the answer is no, don't ask again. Just because the answer was yes once, it doesn't mean the answer is always yes. To find your first job, like as a teenager, just go from place to place filling out paper applications. Nope. Now pretty much everywhere just says apply online and we might call. Last year I applied at the In-N-Out, a popular burger place in the southwest US. On their website they recommended going in person and requesting an application. I got there and they told me they only really do online applications. So I applied online and never got a response. You may fascinate a woman by handing her a piece of cheese. I mean, this one's still true. I'd definitely be fascinated if some rando handed me cheese out of context. Show your employer loyalty and they'll be loyal to you. My family is super old-fashioned and don't understand that this is bullcrap at all. My father spent 30 years in the military and then had to leave because he was too fat. He entered the job market at almost 50 and failed miserably. He had no idea how to compete. Everything he knew was what his father taught him 50 years ago. The poor guy almost lost his house before he found a job to support himself. He got an offer 2 years later for more money, and it was still close at home, and he turned it down because he feels like he owes his current job. He just doesn't get it. My friend believed this for so long and would stay late every day even after all of us told him they're a business and don't give a crap about you. When he was eventually released after COVID cutbacks, he understood. I hope, anyway. My grandmother used to say, "Don't drink water after eating fruit or you'll get sick." Apparently this comes from a time when people drank from wells. The sugar from the fruit would allow bacteria from the water to ferment in the stomach. It's no longer a problem with modern water supplies. Oh, if you have bullies, just ignore them. Honestly, this was never applicable, as someone who's dealt with bullies for as long as I can remember. It's an unrealistic expectation that a-holes like me would just stop because you don't care. It's really hard to ignore a bully that knocks you to the ground and has his buddies start kicking you like a football while he literally jumps his whole weight on your head in an attempt to break open your skull. Broken bones and black eyes make them stop. Honestly, nothing short of that worked. Roast them so hard that everyone else is making fun of them for a while, you're going to get jumped on the way out at the end of the day. If you ignore them, they double down. If you talk it out, no one is a reasonable bully. Just follow better advice. Be professional, be polite, but have a plan to beat up everyone you meet. Oh, 1900s medicine. Sore throat? Smoke a cigarette. Depression? Smoke a cigarette. Pain from pregnancy contraction? Smoke a whole pack. So modern capitalism may have its own host of horrifying dystopian problems, but at least we're temporarily past the stage where adverts can tell you to drink a Coca-Cola or smoke cigarettes if you're feeling unwell. Although, with the current administration, who knows? To get a job, walk on into any place of business. They're always hiring, and talking to the manager will get you that job starting today. Firm handshake, get the nice paper for your copies of your CV. I remember my teachers telling me, don't study these new trendy subjects at university like media, video editing, or tech. You should focus on traditional subjects like literature, history, and so on. 15 years after graduating with my Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts in English Lit, I now work minimum wage in a shop. Frick my life. Don't talk about salaries at work. That was just bullcrap employers perpetuated to stop you working out you were on less than other colleagues. I work my butt off and well out of working hours to manage awful clients that the sales team wrangles in, as well as the rest of my colleagues in my department. I recently found out that the sales team makes about $40,000 more starting pay and gets a monthly bonus. I've been on the sales calls before where they oversell and then wash their hands of the issues, and then they're able to end their day at a reasonable hour. I wouldn't have realized just how screwed over and undervalued some departments are if people didn't discuss their salaries. And I know sales teams are vital to growth, but client retention is important in maintaining that. In general, don't overwork employees and pay them what they're worth. If your team is drowning, then get them resources. Adults in the 90s and early 2000s, don't put your personal information online. So fast forward to 2021, 500 million Facebook users' phone numbers, names, and emails were leaked. I wonder how many of those are people aged 50 or up. If you work hard, you'll be treated right. You're not always going to have a calculator on you. Learn to do the math properly. The cost of housing will never outpace affordability. Just go get a job in the mailroom and work your way up. Oh, that advice given to young girls. That boy's being mean to you because he has a crush on you. Nope, that boy is just being a jerk, and that behavior is not a good thing. My dad would repeatedly advise that I go into as many places as I could and drop off a printed CV for their records, and that this was the best way to get a job. It wasn't true then. Few places accepted unsolicited applications and then they threw them out, and it definitely isn't true now. Nowhere accepts unsolicited. Applications are all done online. To finish your plate. I just teach my kids to stop eating when they feel they've had enough. No need to stuff their faces with more food just because of whatever. I'm not American, by the way. I absolutely agree, but our daughter of 5 years takes 2 bites of her dinner and then goes, "I'm not hungry anymore," and then 5 minutes after the table is cleared she goes, "I'm hungry." So yeah, we've started being a little more strict with her having to eat her food. Go to college and you'll get a good job. One day you'll meet the right person, fall in love and get married, and you'll be happy. What a load of horse crap. If the baby won't stop crying, check to make sure the diaper pin isn't sticking into him. You should duel your friend in a sword fight for slandering you. Oh my god, grandpas are always like, "So I pestered her and followed her around for months and months even though she told me to go away until she finally went out with me. And we've been married for 50 years this month." Yeah, don't do that. When driving, keep your hands at 10 and 2. That actually increases the chance of having your arms crushed by a deploying airbag. I learned in 2016 and was encouraged to use positions 8 and 4 for that reason. The customer is always right. This advice is still correct, but most people don't understand it. It doesn't mean do whatever your customer wants or they have a right to be a butthead, but rather, if you create a product or service that nobody wants, you'll fail, or something like that. The saying has been grossly misused over the years. The more you know. If you want to show a company how interested you are in a position, keep checking back. Don't let them forget you. Man, turns out a lot of us were just forced to see this one through, huh? I remember thinking there was no way this would work when I was younger and was forced to do it anyway. And I was completely correct, apart from one gentleman who actually took my CV and said he liked my drive, then never called back and disappeared from the store afterwards. Good times. "Show her who's the boss. Just go right up and kiss her," said by Creed in the office. My dad would always jokingly say, "Hug your crush when no one's looking, and if she doesn't resist, she has a crush on you, and if she does, just pretend it was an accident." And apparently my brother tried this. Guess which parent refused to show his face when the school called? Take it like a man. Men don't cry. As a woman who wants to see men grow and express their emotions, it seems damaging to make them adhere to an outdated gender norm. Sort laundry by type. Oh, you're going to need to learn cursive for those job applications. Oh, you can trust him. He's a banker. Ditto with politicians. You need to go to college. My mother still believes you can bombard people with inquiries about employment, even after the pandemic lockdowns started. If you crank your eggplant too much, you'll go blind. I'm sure the average person on the internet knows by now this isn't true. If you spare the Switch, you'll spoil the child. You should spoil your children. Buy the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, maybe just not the Nintendo Switch 2 just yet. That press conference was a disaster and it looks real bad. 20 years ago, people said, "You'll want to save up 30 to 50 grand so you can put a down payment down on a house." Now you just add another zero onto that and hope that someone doesn't come in with a cash offer. You should only eat oysters in months with an R in them. It was something to do with oyster season and how they aren't any good during the summer, May, June, July, August. Nowadays, with oyster farms, it's not really a risk anymore. You shouldn't date someone from another ethnic background. That's the one my mother taught me. Don't spend too much time online, you'll ruin your career. Now that same teacher is teaching via Teams. Oh sweetie, can you wait until after 11 PM to make a long-distance phone call? That's when the rates go down. If you want to talk to someone again, make sure that you've got your pager on you. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yes, it was when we ate breakfast, then worked in the fields for 12 hours. Now you should eat when you're hungry. Don't spend it all in one place. I love the convenience of getting everything I need in one place. How do you call out a boomer complaining about kids these days? Didn't you guys have pet rocks in response to an adult having a temper tantrum over fidget spinners? Your generation is soft. It's all the participation trophies you were given. Sure, but who gave us those participation trophies again? Who was that? You know what's really strange about participation trophies? The other parents really push them on you if you don't want to participate. After soccer season last year, I said that we didn't need to get trophies because we didn't win the league. I'm the coach of a U10 girls team. The parents went out and bought the trophies for the kids anyway. I guess the point was lost on them. The kids could not have cared less about the trophies. I think the parents were the ones that wanted them more. Yeah, now shut the F up, George. You were doing lines when you were their age. To this day, I still think about that grandma at the grocery store. What a great wife. Context, I was shopping with my girlfriend, we were laughing, and I accidentally bumped the old geezer's cart. He flipped the frick out with a whole rant about how horrible young people are today, and his wife sat him the F down. I'm living in Germany, and there was an old man complaining for no reason to a friend and me, saying something like, "With soldiers like you, there's no war to win." My friend looked him in the eyes and said, "And with soldiers like you, we lost 2 of them." This might be my most favorite comment in the entire world. It's just a bonus that it's Germany. Not to diss most Germans nowadays, y'all are pretty cool. My grandma said something along the lines of, "Young people are so offended these days. So I reminded her that back when she was born, women were being arrested for wearing pants in public. I usually come back with, says the generation that has a full-blown temper tantrum every time someone says Happy Holidays. My father-in-law is 55. Whenever he starts with that, your generation is so offended by everything, crap, I just casually remind him that he comes from a time when people would shut stuff down if someone of a darker skin tone drank out of the same water fountain as them. My uncle complaining about kids these days in front of his mother, who's 96 and still has all of her sass. She responded with, yeah, because you were just a frickin' ray of sunshine to raise, weren't you? For the record, the uncle is a butthole completely of his own volition. I don't know how he turned out that way considering the wonderful woman who raised him. I don't know why half of the narrator's sassy grandma characters in this video are coming out with Aussie accents. I guess it's because there's something inherently funny about a vicious old Aussie duck. They're a magnificent species, truly. I work at a bookstore in a smaller, retirement-heavy town. So as you can guess, we get tons of old people in every day, and they all think they're the most important person in the store. One time we had this particularly bad old lady who wanted a book that we didn't have in stock yet. So I tried to explain to her that the book came out in just shy of a couple of months, and if she wanted, then we could pre-order it for her. She was not having any of that. She claimed I was lying and trying to steal her money. So I offered to show her the other books we had by that author, which was met with a stern no and her informing me very loudly that she had read all of the author's other books and that I could find a way to get her that book today, and she wasn't leaving until she had it in her hand. I called a manager to the front who again tried to explain the situation to absolutely no positive result. Eventually, she finally looked at me behind the counter and on the other side of my manager and told me, my grandkids can order anything they want online and it's there in a couple of days, but my book will take me 2 months to get to my home? You're just trying to punish me for being old. She then demanded my manager send me away and that I've made her very upset. He looked her dead in the eyes and told her that he could send me away, but if she wanted this book to ever get ordered, she might consider being a little nicer to the people whose job it was to get it to her. I have never seen a walker move so quickly out of a store. She was gone in seconds. Me and 2 of my friends were sitting on a bus. It was a Friday afternoon and we were going to a concert, so each of us had a couple of beers in hand. 3 old ladies got on the bus and told us that we should give them our seats. Since half the seats on the bus were empty, we just told them to sit somewhere else. They sat down behind us and started crap-talking really loudly about us and our generation. They said we were lazy drunkards who were good for nothing, all the usual stuff. They were ranting for a good 10 minutes until one of them said something like, I just hope when they're this old they'll know what being treated like this feels like. At this moment, a 30-something-year-old guy who sat near them stood up and said something like, God, you know what? I hope I die before 60 so I won't become a bitter old crone like you are. And then he got off the bus. The old hags was speechless. A keynote speaker was basically talking crap about millennials at a corporate function I attended. My boss was like, wow, he really hit the nail on the head with your generation. My response was, we didn't raise ourselves with those standards, you all brought us up this way. It actually made him pause and consider that. A young guy on my team at work. Other people were complaining about millennials in 2018. I pointed out that them not being 38 yet also makes them millennials. I love millennials complaining about millennials, especially when they're all like, I'm not a millennial, I don't do X, Y, or Z. I work for what I have, blah blah blah. Yeah, no generalized millennial does that, and many of them work their butts off hardcore. You guys are so spoiled nowadays. I was looking at an apartment near me and said, these apartments are over $2,000 a month. Well, maybe you should be looking at a studio. This is a studio, with 2 other roommates. The $2,000 is just a third of the rent. Well, good luck. How much did your apartment cost again? Which one? I had several when I was younger. I stared at him for a while. My dad was married, had owned multiple new cars, and had 2 kids and built a brand new house by the time he was 30 years old. I saw his high school report cards, and to be honest, with all the F's and D's, he should have failed. The guy didn't do a lick of work in high school, got terrible grades, but was still rewarded with a job the day after he graduated high school that afforded him all of this on that high school diploma. He's another boomer who thinks every younger generation is lazy. Old people talk a lot of crap about this generation until they suddenly turn off their Wi-Fi and can't remember how to turn it back on, and then I'm suddenly the master of information and resources. This old guy shouting at my brother, kids these days don't know how to save up for college the old-fashioned way, through odd jobs and hard labor. My brother retorted, I am literally mowing your lawn to save up for college. I really have no room to talk. In my day, people thought mullets were cool and girls aquanetted their bangs to the ceiling. Every generation thinks the next ones are the ones who are bat-crap crazy. I was on the train reading a book on my phone. An older lady made the comment that kids these days are always on their phone instead of books. I responded and told her that phones now have the ability to store books, and I told her that I was reading, and then asked her what book she was reading since she was such a bookworm. She had no answer since she didn't have a book. So I said, ugh, baby boomers these days always have their noses in other people's business instead of a book. She called me rude, and I told her to please refrain from speaking to me because I was in the middle of a really good book. Look guys, things were hard for you, things are also hard for modern kids. It's just a different kinda hard. Millennials. Usually every generation has it better than the ones that came before. That's progress. That's as it should be. Millennials are probably the generation more thoroughly screwed over by their predecessors than any other. Massive debt, ruined environment, overpopulation, wealth disparity, and for all that, the generations that are screwing them over call them spoiled and entitled. A great quote I read once went something along the lines of, "We knew those participation trophies were bullcrap when you gave them to us, but we accepted them because it seemed important to you. If we had known you'd hold them over our heads someday, we would have told you to shove them up your butts." Suppose the millennials had told their parents to take those participation trophies and shove them. The parents would have said that showed how ungrateful and disrespectful the kids were. If the kids accept the participation trophies, they're bad for having them. This is a no-win situation for the kids. No matter what they do here, people will complain about kids these days. The narrator has had participation trophies successfully hung over his head for a fair chunk of his life, until people like the commenters above pointed out to him that no, he didn't ask for them. I don't remember receiving them with anything other than bemusement and generally lost them pretty quickly afterwards because I just didn't care that I got them. They were a token to make our parents feel better. It annoys me no end that I can't make that comeback retroactively. Just remember that when we were kids, we wore parachute pants, listened to a flock of seagulls, and thought the California raisins were cool. Me responding to someone my age belittling my kids. My coworker said that millennials were lazy and entitled. She's 26. I pointed out that she was a millennial, and she replied saying that I was more of a millennial than her. I'm Gen Z. That's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. My response to whenever parents, teachers, or elders in general say kids these days is adults these days can't teach their kids a thing. As an example, say my parents use a word I've never heard of, I ask them what it meant, they go for the kids these days thing, and I go, yeah, you're right, kids don't know a damn thing these days. They could have known that if their parents taught them. Here are some facts. Violent crime is down compared to when Gen Xers like me were a kid. Teen pregnancy is down. If kids being whiny and disrespectful and addicted to screens is the price we have to pay for that, then yes please, I'll have the whining. It's a lot better than being R-worded or murdered. This generation has no respect, blah blah blah, spoken by a grown man with a useless son. So who raised that generation then? You know, my dad had this thing about respect. Everything he didn't like was apparently disrespectful. You used the last of the hand soap? You didn't like the same music he did? You had the gall not to cook your own scrambled eggs the way he liked? Well, apparently that's disrespectful and we were punished for it. So when I hear someone complain that people don't respect them, I get a little apprehensive. In any case, if you have to demand respect, you probably don't deserve it. Oh, you were complaining about African Americans calling for equal rights when you were their age, Harold. People in nursing homes are so savage, man. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A few weeks ago, I walked up in line at the express checkout in the grocery store to hear the two seniors in front of me complaining about kids these days. Conversation ranged from how rude they were, to how stupid they were, to how inconsiderate they were, and then the old lady unpacked 14 items out of her cart onto the belt in the 10 items or less lane, while still griping about how young people are inconsiderate. I literally laughed out loud. She looked at me, looked at her items, and then the full context of what she was doing registered. The look on her face was actually amazing. I didn't say anything else. I just smiled at her and she turned her back to me and shut the heck up. I am part of the generation after the millennials. I'm 18, so please let me know if I'm wrong. I feel like every generation has it rough in their own way. Baby boomers were raised by a generation that lived through both world wars and a depression. Millennials were raised during the Great Recession, September 11th, and a couple of other events. What I'm getting at is that this whole "we have it harder than you" rock-throwing contest is just stupid. Meanwhile, my generation has no idea what to do. We have one generation telling us what we do is pointless, and one generation telling us that we're spoiled. I get so angry over this whole generational war. Maybe I don't have a right because I didn't experience it. So here's what I've experienced in my life. 1. Kids are Control-Alt-Deleting on life because they believe that what they think doesn't matter or they're too afraid to get help. 2. We're told that what we do won't matter. Don't deny it, you've seen posts about how people had a plan and then they ended up working somewhere they really didn't want to because they had no choice. 3. We're treated even worse than millennials and boomers because apparently we're just kids. And 4. The hope, if any, that we're given is shut down or apparently false. If we say, "I want to be an artist," a boomer will go, "What kind of job is that? It's not one that's what it was." And the millennial says, "Don't try it. Finding jobs for it is hard and you'll end up in debt." What the frick is the point then? No wonder we all want to Control-Alt-Delete. We don't have a future according to both the generations. Maybe I'm wrong for thinking this, but I'm just one of a few that's decided that ending things would be pointless. I can't leave my brother alone. Sometimes I regret not following that through. Thanks for letting me rant though. And shout out to Gen X for raising my generation but also getting a crappy time of things. My parents are Gen Xers and they had it real bad too. I'm glad some of you believe in my generation, more so than me. I believe we're putting our foot down more, which is a good thing, but I also believe that we need to balance it. I see some of the bad parts of what my generation is bringing, and I hope others will too. A Gen X or 40-year-old-ish woman saw her nephew and niece watching a YouTube video of some gamer and started pointing it out to her friends. She said, "Did you know that kids these days watch videos of other people playing video games?" The Gen Xers all started laughing together. I answered, "And what? You watch sports, don't you?" "Well, that's not the same thing." "It 100% is though. You buy jerseys so you can pretend to be on a team you don't qualify for, so that you can cheer on teenagers playing a sport that you don't play. Plus, if I don't know I want to buy a $50 game, I don't have to. I can watch a playthrough and see if it's worth it." "Oh, that's not why they do it." "So what? At least if I buy a game I can play it nearly as good as the people that I watch. If I got you a football, could you kick a 40-yard field goal?" Most of the time when I hear kids these days, I say, "Kids are supposed to be stupid. What's your excuse?" When mine complain, I just turn off the life support. Well, that's a much more extreme form of comeback than most of the ones we're seeing here, and however much your parents get on your back, I don't feel we can quite condone that on the channel here. When my fellow boomers go off on it, I normally just roll my eyes and say, "Yeah, because we were so much better." Personally, I like the way that these millennials are becoming activists. It shows they care. The students at the school my husband works at organized a peaceful firearm reform demonstration. When I was in high school, we could hardly organize a sleepover, and I literally never ever read or watched the news. It blew my mind when I got to college and had to figure out who to vote for. From some dark part of the webinet long ago, someone who was probably in the baby boomer generation was complaining about how kids get participation trophies for everything. Someone replied, "So who gave us the participation trophies? We didn't ask for them." Market cause scary workable cake sand divide bells file license? Thanks for writing in. I think people who care about kids of today this much have got something wrong with them. Except kids falling off bikes. Frick, I could watch kids falling off bikes all day. I don't give a crap about your kids. I've heard people call millennials weak. I find that funny because it kind of seems to me like millennials are capable of changing with the times and keeping up with progress, while older generations refuse progress and shun anyone who has it. Just because we don't have to walk in the snow 10 miles to school doesn't mean we'd be incapable of that. Plus, why the hell do they talk about things like that longingly? I thought millennials could change with the times, and for the most part they can, but after seeing Reddit's reaction to Fortnite and its fan base in the year of 2019, I'd have to disagree. Be nice, those kids will be wiping your butt one day. Some lady at the library was complaining about how children are using iPads too young and how they shouldn't be using technology at all because it's bad for them. I told her that the kids that are using iPads at the age of 3 are going to be the same adults who invent the most amazing technology that'll change the world someday. And then I offered her help to send an email because she's apparently too old to know how. Yeah, I disagree with you though. It just works style computing has only made people more allergic to technology. How many people today know how to use the command prompt? That used to be literally everybody. "Hey, shut up," is my go-to response. It's simple, elegant, and timeless. I just say, "The one I raised is great. How did you do with yours?" I was at a punk concert, swinging udders, and one of my friends, being a first-generation punk like myself, says, "These young punks don't have no respect." I replied, "No respect? It's freaking punk rock, man." Everyone started laughing and we enjoyed the gig. I overheard this guy complaining about how kids these days think gay marriage should be allowed, and a person responded, "At least we weren't racist and sexist." I live in a small town and any minor crime makes for amazing debates on the local Facebook page. At one point, some kid threatened another with a knife and the whole place went mental with, "The world is going downhill and what is it with kids these days?" So I did something that I'd been wanting to do for a while. I started a thread on there detailing how my granddad had been threatened by an actual gang of lads with Stanley knives and even straight razors, which should have been a clue, giving details of exactly where it happened, but crucially leaving out the date. After the usual outcry of, "Kids these days," I explained the truth. It was all true, but happened in the late 1940s and the gang in question were Teddy boys from a nearby city. My granddad died before I was born and the pub it happened outside was demolished 25 years ago. I pointed out that this was nothing new, it's always happened, and if anything, crime in the area is down on what it used to be. If anything, kids are becoming more moral and law-abiding. A huge amount of people agreed too, and there was an entertaining discussion about all sorts of crimes and events from the past several decades that have taken place in our little town. Those who criticize this generation forget who raised it. You know the old days when people started wars and killed thousands of people? The old days when showing skin was weird? The old days when we started 2 wars that led to trillions of dollars of debt? Those old days when we had separate but equal? And when Christianity was dominant in school and government? Insert your complaint here. Yeah, those were the days. Older Gen Xer here, please don't blame us, we're not our parents. Also, a lot of us are computer and tech literate. Some of us are industry experts. We work with millennials. My kids are 30 and 34. I sure don't give them a hard time. I'm not my parents. Stop lumping us in because we're grey-haired. Please. If I had the courage, I'd probably say, "You know, I bet your parents said the same thing about your generation, and their parents said the same thing about theirs." I heard a lady say, "Oh my god, the Fortnite dance is so stupid." Her husband piped in, "Shut up, Martha, I still have that video of you doing the Macarena." There was then silence for an extended period of time. This was all overheard by me at a local coffee shop. Haha, well, the one thing that both of those cringy dances of their generations have in common is that they'll never equal the glory of the Charleston, a dance so cool that I'm positive the kids are still doing it at the discotheques of today. While I'm older, each generation develops their own rivalry with the preceding and upcoming generation. Never trust anyone over 30 was such a common mantra at one time that it worked its way into many sci-fis in the 60s and 70s. Truth is, every generation feels the last generation screwed them by not giving them a pristine world, and the older generation is annoyed that they're not given credit for the things that they've done to make it better. The world was messed up when we got it, we try to make it better where we could, and it'll still be messed up when you get it. And you'll try to fix it in little ways and pass a messed up world to the generation after. Just keep moving forward. There are less wars today than any before, there's less global poverty, and people live longer and healthier. That's nothing to scoff at least. Funnily enough, it was on Facebook. A post about millennials taking basic classes like cooking, sewing, and laundry. The post was something like, "Oh my god, millennials, how useless and ridiculous." The response was that the current generation was so proactive that they seek out the skills the previous generation failed to teach them. Hot damn. All I'm going to add is that I'm a Gen Xer and I'm so glad I grew up when I did. Kids these days face a ton of pressure from every direction. Being a kid or younger person today looks exhausting. How did your life turn out after you bought a one-way ticket and started everything from scratch? I did this when I was 16. I took one backpack worth of clothes, said goodbye to my family, and flew off to the other side of Australia. Just before I left, I found a place to stay via Gumtree, which was a similar website to Craigslist. Being young and naive, I didn't realize the full extent of what I was doing, and soon realized that without a job, I just couldn't afford my rent. I ended up in the hospital, then in youth shelters for a few months, and at one stage during that, I had to stay on the streets for about 2 weeks. So that was fun. Long story short though, this was over 10 years ago and now I live in a different state altogether and work in the financial industry doing quite well for myself. I have no regrets. I met some amazing people and had some crazy journeys. From rural Mississippi to Southern California, I was bartending and I saved up a couple of $1,000 which I used to prepay for 2 months in a hotel. I packed what I could into my car, including my dog, and drove here. I kinda had the attitude that I would even work at McDonald's if I had to, but I found a decent job after about a month and a half and things worked out. Best decision I ever made. I've done something similar several times. When I was young, I used to work 2 full-time jobs at a time, save up as much money as I could in a couple of years, and then quit my jobs, sell everything that didn't fit on my bicycle, buy a one-way ticket somewhere else, and then see how far I could get on the money that I had. I did that 3 times in all, but I'd come home in between to make money. I could get roughly 1-to-1 time exchange and travel for just as long as I worked. I highly recommend it, but it is a game for the young. For trip 1, I started in London, Western Europe, Eastern Europe before the wall fell, and the Middle East. Trip 2 started in Amsterdam, Western Europe, North Africa, across the Sahara, West Africa, Central and East Africa. Trip 3 started in Athens, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, 6 years of peddling altogether. My ex-wife ended our marriage totally out of the blue. I was devastated. I bought a one-way plane ticket to the other side of the world with £1,000 sterling in my back pocket. No job, nowhere to live. That was around 4 years ago. I now have a great job, a gorgeous girlfriend, and a house overlooking the beach. Thanks, ex-wife. I had a one-way gas pedal. I sold all of my stuff, got in my little Civic and drove across Canada to Vancouver sight unseen. Been here for 15 years now, new friends, married, kid, own a business, everything's good. Now we're thinking of doing the same thing as a family, packing up and moving overseas to where our ancestors came from. Why not? Life's too short to stay in one place forever. The narrator was thinking that he'd never be brave enough, but then now that you mention it, I did a softer version of this 9 years ago, and I'm now a business owner in the country I live in now, so yeah, sometimes your little crazy trip sneaks up on you and turns into your new life. At the age of 27, I sold everything in my house, moved from the southeast corner of the country to the Pacific Northwest. It was a wild drive, and it's been wild times since then. I've gone on to accomplish the greatest things I've ever done in my life so far. There have been dark, lonely times, but also the best times I've had in my life so far. Seattle is great. Leaving it all behind isn't for everyone. It takes a strong person. You will feel alone, you will doubt your decision, but if it's something you've always wanted to do, you'll be grateful in the end and you'll become a better version of yourself. If you truly want something out of your life, go get it. Period. Let nothing stop you. That deathbed is coming for you, same as it is for everyone else. Are you okay with spending your time where you are for the rest of your life? Or would you look back with regret? We get so caught up in life that we forget that we only have this one chance to do what we love. Don't be curious forever. Go out. Go after what you want. The price was steep, but I paid it gladly. It was an investment in myself. In the end, the decision must be based on the real question you must ask yourself. Who do you want to be? Not what do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who left or the person who stayed? I'm in my early 20s and just ended a long-term unhealthy relationship and moved across the country to California to completely start over. I saved up a few months' expenses back home and found a place on Craigslist to move into before I flew in. It took me about a month to find a seasonal job, and luckily as that job ended, I got hired on to a nice food chain. I've been here in Stockton for 7 months and I currently live paycheck to paycheck. I don't own a vehicle, so I bike everywhere, but I feel so free and in control of my life now. I don't ever regret coming to California, even though I live in one of the worst possible cities to have hope in. These other stories make me feel like a silly, complacent fool. I want an adventure. No, I'm a Baggins from Bag End. The best thing I have ever done was move to the other side of the planet. I would rather be a waitress in Germany than a professional anything in Australia. The lifestyle, people, location, smell, food, transport, socks, toothpicks, luggage, beer, watches, supermarkets, ice cream, makeup, speakers, printers, housing, wine, cleaning products, and dogs, they suit me better than the comfort and safety of Australia. I love everything about Germany and I will do anything to never leave. I don't regret it. Not even once. I'm originally from Maryland. I've had a few IT-related jobs, but got into bartending. I worked in bars for 8 years, dead-end jobs, all of them. I lived the bar lifestyle. Good money, but then I went nowhere. A buddy I went to school with hooked me up with a job in San Francisco working at a game studio. I packed a bag, grabbed $2,000, one-way ticket and moved. Worked at that studio for a year, got another job, then another, then another. Busted my butt for 4 years now, but I have a well-paying job at a great company with plenty of new friends and a career. I don't even have the urge to visit Maryland. I convinced my boyfriend that we should quit our jobs and move into a custom camper on the back of a truck. We've got a couple of duffel bags of clothes, our dog, a couple of milk crates of books, and a lot of cooking equipment. Now we travel around making pies for people and giving them away for free. We don't anticipate being nomadic forever. In fact, we'd like to go back to Michigan when our pie tour is over and open a donation-based cafe. But we're both loving the tiny nomadic life right now. 3 years ago, I left a good-paying job, my incredibly loving friends, my parents, and a lifestyle that left me wanting for little to finish my education. I had, at the time, been paying $1,000 a month in tuition and was close to graduating, but knew that I needed to have a different degree and continue on to grad school. I was accepted to a school that was $45,000 a year, so I looked elsewhere and found a place with a great reputation and about a third of the cost. Everything fell apart for me within a month of my move. I spent all of my savings to start this new life. Since then, I've been struggling so hard just to make ends meet that I haven't been able to save up enough to move back home. Each semester I stay here, I get further and further off track. Instead of working towards my goals of graduation and grad school acceptance, I'm having to spend each day simply getting through it. Just when I think I'm finally back on track, something else happens and I'm back to square one. I went from $55,000 a year to minimum wage part-time. I went from a 1,500 square foot condo with an in-unit high-efficiency washer and dryer, walking distance from rapid transit, to having to share with a stranger because one-bedroom apartments are too expensive for me and begging for rides to the laundrette. I've taken classes one by one while 2 full classes of graduates have gone on without me. If I could do it all over, I would have never come here. I would have found some way to make it work back home. I would have gone to a lesser school or lived in a bad neighborhood or, I don't know, I just would never have come here. The worst part is how isolated I am. I don't have any family remotely nearby. All the friends I made graduated and moved away. Then the friends I made after that have graduated and are packing up, as I type to move away. Nobody comes to visit me and I don't have the means to visit them. Even if I had the money to rent a car, my work schedule just didn't allow it. The only days I had off were the days when I was in class for 6 hours. I regret absolutely everything about this. I made a decision knowing that I had the drive and ability to reach my goals, but I forgot that some things depend on the actions of others. I was waiting for one of these. I figured that not all of these stories could statistically be winners. I'm sorry that things just didn't work out for you with that trip. I did do a quick check of your profile and it seems like at least you've moved on to pastures new, and I hope things are better now. I'd finished college, I had no direction with my life, so I moved to Honduras and worked at an orphanage for a year. It was great. I ended up coming back to the States afterwards, went to law school, graduated, passed the bar and got a job, and I'm now getting the itch to go and try something intense and new once more. Any suggestions? I ran out of money and had to come home and get a job. I regret that bit of it. I got a traveling IT job that had me going to different towns every day. I was on the road for 6 months and lived out of my tent the whole time, utilizing dry cleaners to maintain that professional image. I was grossing like $1,600 a week and I had every Friday and Sunday off. I've never been happier. Eventually I upped it to a Cadillac of pop-up campers and that's why I'm a pop-up king. I met a girl on America Online. It was in 1994. I was in Kansas, she was in Colorado. I traveled out there to make sure she wasn't a guy, and she wasn't. I went back to Kansas. A couple of months later I bought a plane ticket to Denver and sent for my stuff. We've been married for over 17 years. We both graduated from college and I got a law degree. None of it would have happened if I hadn't taken the risk. It's really weird because I've never had a want to do this before, but lately I've been having a very real urge to drop everything and drive to the Pacific Northwest with my car and a few prized possessions. I don't have a lot saved, but probably enough to do it and afford myself a couple of months to get on my feet in a new location. I'm fortunate to know so many great people here where I am, but I just can't shake this urge. Best decision ever. Had a baby, came to Colorado for a wedding, and loved it so much a week later we left our baby here with her grandma while we went home to upstate New York. Packed as much stuff as we could in our 97 Buick, and after a 4-day trip of chaotic mishaps we finally made it to our new home. I enrolled in a massage school and I couldn't be happier. Plus, Mary J was legalized that same month. Winning. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I didn't regret my move at all. When I was flushed from basic at 18 due to severe arthritis in my elbows, I was a weightlifter in high school and that came back to bite me in the butt. I was stuck without anywhere to go. My grandma had just moved to France, there was no family to speak of that were alive or cared enough to offer me a couch, so I sold all the valuables I still had and bought a Greyhound ticket to Portland, Oregon. That was 3 years ago this past April. Since then, I've traveled all over the West Coast, learned how to skateboard, saw a driftwood tree as wide as a house is tall, met probably hundreds of homeless kids, and traveled anywhere I wanted, anytime I wanted. I've been to almost every state, minus the far northern ones, as I'm from the Keys in Florida, and crap from Ohio North is too cold for me. I know, I'm a wimp. I've traveled Route 66, seen Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, the Grand Canyon, the museums and memorials in Washington, D.C., along with the oddities like the largest frying pan and yarn ball and all that jazz. Then I met some people from a group called a Rainbow Family, whom to this day I keep in contact with, and thanks to that group, my life changed for the better. I was stuck in Vegas. Horrible, I know. And lo and behold, I met a bunch of dudes headed to Northeast Tennessee for the national gathering, and there I met my fiancé, whom I'm proud to say I just had a baby girl with. We both have great jobs, have our adorable daughter, and it's thanks to just buying a ticket and getting out of my comfort zone. To this day, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. In short, basically, it was the best thing I've done. Met my fiancé while traveling, along with hundreds of awesome people, and saw things that I never thought I'd see. You should do it, bro. So long as you're smart about it, you won't regret it. In 2003, my wife and I decided we couldn't bear living in the US any longer. We sold everything we had except our house, a couple of suitcases of clothes, and a small laptop. We bought plane tickets, round trips were oddly less expensive than one way, to Spain, and then promptly threw the return tickets away. We've never regretted that decision, and the chances of us ever returning, other than to visit the family members, are virtually zero. We currently have our own translation company, and even in this economic crisis, we're able to live happily and comfortably. We love this life, our family, our jobs and prospects. We just hope that Spain and the rest of the struggling economies can find a way out of this horrendous economic mess. Written in 2013. I had that opportunity a number of times. I didn't take any of my chances, and I'm stuck here in this hellhole without that woman's unconditional love, support, or friendship. I say in the strongest possible terms, should that opportunity present itself to anyone else, do it. Even if it doesn't work out, the story alone will get you drinks or food. I regret coming back. I did too, until I realized that coming back doesn't mean you have to stay. It is true. Some people just have that wanderlust and thrive more out on the road than others, although that's less about buying a one-way ticket, I suppose. Still, if you've got that urge or you miss the feeling and have no family relying on you, maybe you can get out there again. It's not for everyone, the narrator included, but some of you crazy people seem to draw life and energy from it. Late last winter, just past the brink of 30, I'd had enough of my life. I ended an almost 5-year relationship in the fall and opened a small store, which was failing after my business partner pretty much bailed on me after his own relationship ended around the same time. New York City, my ancestral homeland, had felt like a prison as soon as I'd ended up back in it 7 years prior. I'd been dying to leave, but love and commitments had nailed me down. After finally having a talk with my business partner and him agreeing to close the store, I cried my eyes out in the back of the shop. When I could breathe again, I went to visit my best friend at her bar, where another friend of ours happened to be freshly returned from a long vacation. "You should go there," he insisted. I think it'll embrace you. He waxed rhapsodic and showed me a few photos of a place I'd never considered. Okay, I'll go. Worst case scenario, I hate it and I just pack up and go somewhere else. I'd sat still for quite long enough. 6 weeks later, I'd sold almost everything I owned, the most painful part being my books and comics. I packed whatever was left into a couple of duffel bags, had a pretty fantastic roller coaster of a going-away party, got on a bus and began a meandering road trip adventure from friend's couch to friend's couch, having an amazing time catching up with people I hadn't seen for years. And then it was 2 weeks later, 6 a.m., and I was stepping off that last bus into the still dark morning. The air hit me, thick and warm and damp and sweet. The night-blooming jasmine swept along in the faint breeze of the river, and I was home. New Orleans was the home I didn't know I was missing. I'm so in love with my life here. I'm more myself, some better, stronger, happier version of myself than I've ever been, and I'm grateful every day. I work for an artist, I make art myself, I spend time with all of these amazing friends I have, and I wander through one of the warmest, most interesting, beautiful cities I've ever known. And now I'm in a relationship unlike anything I ever thought possible. It's so fairy tale that we can't help but constantly laugh to each other about it. Regrets? Not a single damn one. At age 27, my dad had a good job, a stable relationship, born and raised in Hong Kong. Then he decided to take a vacation to Vancouver, Canada. This was back in '72, and he fell in love with the city and decided he wanted a life there. His girlfriend refused to come over, and making a life was difficult, according to him, yet he stayed. They broke up. My dad eventually tried investing in the housing market with a few friends. Lost almost all of his money, partly because Vancouver's real estate 40 years ago was nearly non-existent, and also because his friends were just blazed out of their minds half the time. He was so poor at the time and couldn't even afford a ticket back to Hong Kong. He then got extremely lucky and landed a job as a tourist guide for Chinese tourists visiting Canada, and instead of being paid, the company agrees to fly him back to Hong Kong. He worked hard for 10 to 15 years and found a wife. Does stuff with her, I pop out, and he decides he wants his family to live in Vancouver, so he comes back with us. He retires when he arrives in Vancouver in '96. I've asked him before, does he regret his decision back in '72, and he says he doesn't regret anything because in the end, everything worked out. When I was 19, I moved to Germany, all by myself. I left my parents in Brazil, haven't talked to them in a few years. In Germany, there's a test equivalent to the SATs called the AITA. You can only take it once in your life and it lasts 2 years. That's how hardcore it is. Anyway, ever since I was in the 5th grade, I wanted to take this test. I started speaking German in 3rd grade and worked my way up until I was 17, going on 18 when I started my AmITheA. It was quite tough in the beginning. I lived at home still, so my parents were still quite protective. Whenever I wanted to go out, I still depended on them, and that really irked me. I didn't have a job and couldn't get one because of the amount of schoolwork I had, so all the money came from my parents. It was really hard for me to depend so much on them because I really wanted to be independent. When I finished the AITA, I was 19. I took the first flight available to Germany, and I'll never forget that excitement I felt right when I was going to board the plane. To quote The Shawshank Redemption, it was, "The excitement only a free man can feel." I boarded the plane and felt truly amazing. I was finally going away, independent, and hoped to never have to go back to that life. Upon my arrival in Frankfurt, I instantly knew that I was in love with the country. I stayed in Frankfurt a few days and just walked around doing whatever I liked. If I wanted to, I could just stop by a store. If I wanted to, I could buy a €30 shirt. I could do whatever I pleased. I left Frankfurt, but I haven't forgotten the love I have for that city. I stayed in a small town called Haar, next to Munich. Funnily enough, the town's name means hair, and it's something that had always represented the repression I'd grown under. I'd always wanted to grow out my hair and paint it blue, so that's what I did. I started my studies in the Technical University of Munich. I wanted to become an electrical engineer. I'd always liked building things. I spent 5 years basically studying non-stop, and now I live in Hamburg. So all in all, I don't regret my decision of moving. I like being free. I like doing whatever I want. In fact, I'm so free that I wasn't even constrained by my degree when looking for a job. I'm an architect now, which doesn't really have too much in common with electrical engineering. In fact, my boss came up to me and told me he'd need help with the electrical cables we were changing in his office. He called me into it and I asked him, "Was brauchen Sie?" which basically translates to, "What do you need?" "Ich brauch Baumfidden," was his response, which means he needed tree fiddy. It was then that I realized that my boss of 6 years was a 500-foot-tall reptile from the Paleozoic era? That damn Loch Ness monster had had me again. Okay, so this is the narrator editing, several hours after recording that initial piece. I stared at the script for ages. The comment is 12 years old. I don't know if the reference is something that anyone will understand, but I'm leaving it in on the off chance that it's the funniest thing in the world for one of you out there, because I sure don't get it. After watching my thriving business with 5 employees implode in late 2008, I basically said, screw it, and joined the Navy to do something radically different with my life. Now I'm happily married to an awesome girl I would have never met otherwise. I have a new skill set. I have a job I don't like very much, but I'm out of the Navy in a few years. Thankfully, I get to keep the skill set and the wonderful wife, I hope. When I finished my time on active duty in the Army, I was 8 months pregnant. I met my daughter's father in training and spent a week with him before heading for my first duty station. In that week, I accidentally became pregnant. He convinced me to move to his hometown in Indiana so that we could try and work on things and raise our daughter. Not surprisingly, things didn't work and now I'm stuck here. He's a great dad, but here with no close family is very hard, especially since it took me years to get out and make friends of my own. So, yeah, I kind of regret it. My fiancé gave me a 2 weeks notice that I needed to pack up my crap and get ready because he was coming to get me to move me a state away. I had no money, nothing really of value to my name, and ended up shoving all of my stuff in boxes and making the fastest, most unplanned move of my life. There was no decision about it, no prior notice, just, I got us a place, get ready to go. I don't regret the decision, but it could have gone so much worse. I'd only known my fiancé for a short amount of time and had never lived away from my parents. He could have easily turned out to be some sort of serial killer and nobody would have cared, but I ended up with the best life ever. Sure, things are hard financially. I wish we'd saved up money first. I wish I could have had a hand in picking out our future little home, but I definitely don't regret the move. Not to go into too much detail, but my previous living situation was pretty horrible and he wanted to get me out of there. So he did. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.